Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Blooming Memory by Angel Rider 13. When the crew stops at a deserted island, of course Luffy goes off to explore. And, of course, the Straw Hats get more than they bargained for when their captain wanders back to the ship with some kind of plant attached to his wrist. It doesn't seem like such a big deal at first, but then the dreams start. The warlord of my channel are Claude Lifrace, Neoesker 23, Derek Dowdy, Zazu Siaz, Abdul Raf Ali, N3WT, what_if_lord, Black Money _young Leon, Garrick Russell, Ben Brownlee, Case Clark, Tristan Ward, KSGPL4YZ, Brian McKenzie. Join the channel membership if you would like to support the channel. Adios.
Chapter 3 Third Petal A Bond of Brotherhood. The Straw Hats were quiet as they sat in the kitchen the next morning. It wasn't so much because of Luffy's absence, though that was admittedly part of it, but the crew was digesting the information they had been given the night before. Luffy's past wasn't anything like any of them expected. Granted, none of them knew anything about Luffy's past in the first place, but he seemed much too happy and easygoing now to be the quick-tempered boy they saw in the past. In 2 nights, they had learned so much, and some of it worried them. Like Ace. Ace was most definitely not the same person they had encountered in Alabasta. So, Usopp said, breaking the silence, anyone have any ideas about what the heck is going on? Robin hummed as she took a sip of coffee. Not at all, she replied easily. I believe the best way to treat the situation is to treat it how we treat Luffy himself. Zoro grunted. You mean be ready for anything and everything all the time? Robin smiled calmly. Precisely. Usopp sighed. You have a point, he said, but it's just so shocking, I guess. Ace was. The sharpshooter trails off, unable to find a word to accurately describe Ace's younger self. Different, Sanji supplied, taking a drag from his cigarette. He was colder, distant. His eyes were very old for someone so young, Brooke said softly, clearly troubled. Luffy Bros Ainki was definitely mad at someone, Frankie adds. He reminds me of myself, Robin interjected, making everyone turn to her. Nami frowned slightly. What do you mean, Robin? His eyes, she said simply, they were like mine. He has no reason, no purpose, he simply is. Chopper tilted his head to the side. I don't understand. Do you remember the last question he asked Luffy? Robin asked calmly, her eyes sad. The Straw Hats paused at that. You want me to live? Robin looked down into her cup. A child does not ask that question unless they have been told otherwise. But why the heck would anyone say that? Nami asked, brow furrowed, and to a kid. The world is a very cruel place, Nami, Robin said softly. No one needs a reason. It is just something that is. I wonder what made him change, Usopp wondered aloud after a beat of silence. Zoro gave a snort. You really need to ask, the crew smiled, chuckling slightly. The answer was obvious. Luffy, because it was always Luffy. What about that other kid? Sanji asked, exhaling the smoke from his cigarette, Sabo. Luffy's never talked about him before, Chopper said. Luffy bro doesn't talk about his past much, Frankie commented. Nami sighed and shrugged. We didn't even know about Ace until we saw him in person. For all we know, this Sabo could be out there somewhere just waiting to drop in. Robin frowned. But if that was the case, why didn't Sabo show up at Marineford to try and stop Ace's execution? Perhaps he couldn't, Brooke suggested. Brooke has a point, Usopp said thoughtfully. None of us could get there to help, and I don't know about you guys, but I had no idea what was going on until after everything was already over. Chopper nodded sadly. It was the same for me. Me too, Nami said, shoulders slumping. The rest of the crew looked down at the table. It was the same for all of them. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late to help. Ace was already dead. The Whitebeard pirates had already lost. There was nothing they could do to help. It is not unreasonable to think that Sabo-san was in the same position as us, Brooke said softly, breaking the sudden, gloomy silence. Not unreasonable, no, Robin said. Zoro stood. We have no way of knowing, he said, walking towards the door. It's best not to dwell on it. With that he walked out, and the crew was left wondering if he meant Sabo or the fact that Luffy had been alone when he needed them most. Sanji sat up with a groan, rubbing his hand across his face. When he looked up, he was met with the sight of the now familiar white void. Back again, he sighed. Indeed, Sanji-san, Brook said, appearing next to him as he pulled himself to his feet. Around them, the crew began pulling themselves together, looking around the white void. As soon as everyone had gained their bearings, just like the 2 nights before, the void began to shift until they were inside a room. They were back in Dayton's hut. What the hell is going on? Ace, Luffy, who is that? Why is there another of you brats here? Well, they sure know how to start things off, Nami drawled. Ace, Luffy, and Sabo were sprawled out on the floor in a nest of blankets, Dayton standing over them scowling. Luffy made an incoherent whining sound, sitting up and briefly looking up at Dayton before collapsing back in a heap and curling into the blankets. Ace sat up next, with a loud annoyed groan. Growl, you're so noisy in the morning, he grumbled, don't you know what time it is? He didn't even wait for an answer before he fell back onto the blankets. Sabo sat up immediately after, grumbling before he fell back between the other two, limbs flung every which way. It's almost scary how similarly they reacted, Usopp mumbled. Robin just smiled. I believe it is the case of most children that when morning comes, they do not like being woken up. And if you have to wake up to an old bag yelling at you, Zoro deadpanned, arms crossed over his chest. The crew watched, stifling snickers as the 3 boys were finally roused into wakefulness. Sabo plastered a huge grin on his face while Ace and Luffy stood back to watch. Hi, I'm Sabo, the blonde said, I'm going to be staying here from now on. Guess this is what they decided, Sanji commented. It would be better for the little bros to stick together, Frankie said. But here? Really? Nami asked. Dayton doesn't want anything to do with them as it is. I don't really think they care, Usopp muttered, besides, where else would they go? Nami just shrugged. You can't just decide that on your own, Dayton shouted before blinking. Wait, Sabo? I've heard of you, you're one hell of a little brat. Sabo grinned. Really? And I heard you're an old bag? The crew face palmed. He's exactly like them, Usopp exclaimed. Don't bother collecting information you don't need, damn it, Dayton yelled as the other bandit's face faltered. I don't want to deal with any more unruly brats. Sabo just kept grinning. But you're a nice old hag who can't turn down any requests from other people too, right? I heard that you're an old hag who's like a man among men. Oh my god, Nami groaned, hands over her face. Zoro tilted his head to the side as he watched the scene. I almost feel sorry for her. Sanji and Usopp snorted. I'm a woman, Dayton shouted, staring down at the blonde. Little Luffy threw his hands over his mouth to smother his giggles while Ace smirked next to him. After a long moment, Dayton deflated with a sigh. Ace, Luffy, Sabo, Dayton yelled, turning away from them, since you're all under my care you'd better hurry up and get to work. The 3 boys grinned at each other, knowing they had won. Thanks, Dayton, Sabo said. Then as one, the 3 of them turned on their heels and dashed out the door. Hey, Dayton yelled, Luffy, you're supposed to do the laundry and clean the house. She's still on that, Sanji asked in disbelief. Luffy bro couldn't clean anything to save his life, Frankie said. Yo ho 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 ho. Does Luffy-san even know how to clean? Probably not, Zoro deadpanned. No way, Luffy cried, turning around to stick his tongue at Dayton. Ace, Sabo, wait for me. Why'd I get the feeling that something big has just happened? Usopp asked. Robin smiled her calm, mysterious smile. Perhaps it has. Ace and Luffy stood across from each other, Sabo standing a short distance away. What are they doing now? Chopper asked. Begin, Sabo called. Little Luffy suddenly charged forward, spinning one of his arms in a circle while Ace stood still, his arms crossed over his chest. I'm going. Luffy yeastel. The rubber boy threw his fist forward, only for it to bounce back off the ground and punch him in the face instead. Usopp, Chopper, Frankie, Sanji, and Brook burst into laughter. Nami groaned. Oh my god, how can he be that bad? Robin chuckled. Devil fruit users don't automatically know how their devil fruit works, she explained. amusement twinkling in her eyes. It takes most people many years to master them and in some cases to even find out what their fruit does. Some don't ever find out. That it true, Brooke said, calming down. I had no idea what my power was and then I only had a hunch to go on until I was nothing but bones. Yo ho 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 ho. He's come a long way, that's for sure, Sanji said. Zoro raised an eyebrow. Did you expect something else? Ace sighed. I told you, he said suddenly rushing forward and kicking Luffy in the face. What the hell are you trying to do? Sabo grinned. It's over, he said, turning to write something down on the board behind him. When the Straw Hats took a closer look they found that it was a scoreboard. And Luffy's score was 0 all the way around. Zoro said, looking at the board, so that's what they're doing. What do you mean Zoro? Chopper asked. They're training, the swordsman answered, fighting each other a set number of times and recording wins and losses. Ow, it looks like Luffy bro isn't doing so hot. Luffy did say that Ace kicked his ass all the time when we ran into him in Alabasta, Sanji said thoughtfully. Nami rolled her eyes. He seemed so proud of the fact too. Sabo and Ace sparred this time, with Luffy watching. The fight was longer this time around, each boy giving as good as he got. But, eventually, Ace won. Next, Luffy fought Sabo. He tried using his devil fruit again and again it backfired on him. Frankie whistled. Luffy bro just isn't catching a break. Ace rolled his eyes and sighed. I've already told you, he said, your fruit isn't useful for anything. Crap, it won't work, the rubber boy yelled, flailing his arms childishly, just a little more, again. No, Ace said, crossing his arms, we can only fight 100 times per day. Wait until tomorrow. 100? Nami yelled, no wonder they look so beat up, Usopp mused. Sabo was busy writing in the final scores while the other two argued. Damn it, he mumbled, Ace beat me 2 more times. The crew peeked over his shoulders and saw that while Luffy had not won a single fight against either boy, Ace had beat Sabo 26-24. Looks like Ace Aniki is the strongest, Frankie observed. The older brother of a monster is an even bigger monster, Usopp muttered. Chopper nodded. But poor Luffy, he didn't win a single fight. When I'm 10, I'll kick your ass, Luffy yelled at Ace. By then, we'll be 13, he answered indifferently turning away, we better go look for some food. The 3 boys headed out into the trees until they came to a river filled with crocodile that were much larger than them. They aren't, Nami and Usopp deadpanned together. Robin smiled. I believe they are, yo ho 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 ho. We'll have crocodile, Ace decided from in perch in a nearby tree. Crocodile meat is delicious, Luffy said, already starting to drool. Not surprising, Nami said. Not at all, Usopp agreed. Not in the least, Chopper added. Luffy, Sabo said, make sure not to get eaten, alright? Just watch, Ace said, you'll just get in the way. The words weren't even all the way out of Ace's mouth before Luffy was jumping out of the tree. Crocodile meat. I told you to watch, Ace shouted as he and Sabo jumped after him. TCH, shitty captain didn't listen even back then, Sanji grumbled. Luffy was just as troublesome now as he was back then, Usopp said. Perhaps more so, Robin commented, at least now he knows how to use his powers to defend himself. The crew once again thanked Shanks for Luffy's powers. The thought of having to deal with Luffy as he was without them made them shudder. And of course they beat it, Nami said, watching as the boys cheered over their prize. A cloaked figure walked through Grey Terminal, pulling a long, short cart toward the wall that separated the terminal from the city. Chopper cocked his head to the side. Who's that? Usopp shrugged. Don't know. Frankie frowned and leaned down towards Robin. You don't think? Robin just smiled up at him knowingly and put a finger to her lips. Hey, stop, what's this? The guard asked as the figure passed. Crocodile leather for sale, the figure said, pulling the cover back to reveal the animal. That's, Sanji started. Zoro nodded. Yup. Oh, very clever, Brooke exclaimed. The guard jumped back in surprise at the sight of the crocodile. Alright. G go ahead. The cloaked figure moved through the gate. The city on the other side was not as high class as some of the crew were expecting. The buildings were dirty and a bit rundown. Still, it was much better living conditions than Grey Terminal. Looks like this is the rough part of town, Frankie said. I expected a bigger class rift, Nami said thoughtfully, given what we could see from that junkyard. I suspect this town has different classes just like any other place, Robin commented, but here it seems more defined. Given what we've seen so far, I would say that the lower classes live toward the edge of the city, while the higher classes live towards the center. Robin Schwan is so smart, Sanji cried, hearts in his eyes. Nami nodded, completely ignoring Sanji. That makes sense, those buildings over there look to be in much better condition, she said, pointing to some buildings in the distance that seemed to almost shine in comparison to the ones they were currently surrounded with. It seems you're carrying something valuable there, a thug said, approaching the cloaked figure with some other men. When the man stayed quiet, he said, "Answer, you bastard." "Shut up, you pathetic hoodlum," a voice came from under the cloak. It was a voice the Straw Hats all recognized. Zoro snorted, an amused smirk on his face, while Robin covered her mouth with her hand to hide her smile. "Oh dear," she said. "What?" the thug cried. A metal pipe crashed into the man's ankle, knocking his feet out from under him. "Before you rob somebody, you should choose your targets more carefully." The cloak was thrown off to reveal Sabo, Luffy, and Ace stacked on top of each other, metal poles in their hands and confident smirks on their faces. "Ah, it was them the whole time," Chopper exclaimed. "Amazing," Usopp shouted. Nami just sighed and rubbed her temples. "It's those brats," one of the thugs cried. But before anyone could do or say anything more, the trio was on them. Frankie laughed. "Looks like Luffy bro and his Anikis know a thing or two about living on the rough side of town." The crew watched as the trio knocked the thugs aside before climbing back on top of each other and donning their cloak again, resuming their walk. The city around them soon changed, the buildings becoming cleaner and more pristine. They traded in the crocodile skin for a rather large chunk of money, which pleased the boys as they talked about their pirate fund and Luffy's hunger. The crew noticed though, that the three's cloaked form was getting many looks from the people around them, most of their expressions containing disgust. It was true that the cloak the boys used stuck out in comparison to the fancy, clean clothes those around them wore, but the cloak itself wasn't so bad, just dirty. "I don't know if I like this place," Chopper said, wrapping his arms around himself. "I don't like those looks." "It's a bit strange really," Nami observed, "considering where they got it. That cloak is in pretty good condition and pretty clean. But in comparison to all this," she trailed off, waving a hand to encompass the city. "It's like there's not a speck of dirt anywhere," Usopp said, looking around. "It is very clean here," Brook agreed, "even the streets seem dirt-free." "Great," Zoro drawled. Eventually, the boys arrived at a restaurant. The host inside bowed and welcomed them as the door opened, but when he straightened and caught sight of who had just entered the restaurant, he paled and became somewhat frantic. Wait a minute," he stuttered out, holding his hands up in an attempt to stop the boys. "You can't come in here." "Eh? Why can't they go in?" Chopper asked. "Probably because they're dressed like a bum," Zoro answered, arms crossed over his chest. "This city seems to value cleanliness," Robin observed. "Anything dirty is probably associated with the lower classes. It is likely that they will not be served at any store they enter because of their attire." "That's a shitty reason not to feed someone," Sanji grumbled, stuffing his hands into his pockets to restrain himself. There was shifting around under the cloak and Sabo's hand appeared, holding a gold crest in his hand. "I'd like a private room," Sabo announced, voice ringing with authority. The host gasped for a moment, eyes wide. That emblem," he stuttered before recovering and bowing low. "It is an honor that a noble like you would visit my restaurant. We'll serve you right away." "That was pretty cool," Ace whispered. "Where'd you get it?" I found it in town," Sabo answered. Brook tilted his head to the side. "Noble?" Nami's eyes turned to belly signs. "That's pure gold. And of course you can tell just by looking at it," Usopp muttered. "A noble's family crest. I wonder where Sabo bro got that," Frankie wondered aloud. Robin looked thoughtful, but said nothing as the boys were led to a private room. Shortly after, a serving girl entered with 3 large bowls of ramen. "Here you are, sir, 3 orders of ramen," the waitress said shyly, keeping her eyes on the floor. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Please, eat and enjoy," she said as she backed out of the room, closing the door behind her. The boys immediately threw off the cloak and each claimed a bowl for themselves. So, this is ramen. Sabo exclaimed in excitement as he settled in his seat and looked into the bowl. It looks tasty, Luffy cried, drooling. Ace smiled. Well, try to eat some. They didn't need to be told twice before they were practically inhaling the ramen. Delicious. Luffy shouted happily. Sabo grinning. You're right, this is delicious. The boys finished the bowls within minutes, something that didn't surprise the crew in the slightest. I think I feel really sorry for the restaurant staff, Usopp said. It's what shitty bastards deserve for refusing people food, Sanji muttered. I want more. Luffy inevitably shouted, causing Ace and Sabo to jump up and clap their hands over his mouth. Shish. They hissed. Sabo pulled away from Luffy and cleared his throat. I would like another serving. 3 orders of ramen, he said, voice filled with the same authority it held earlier when he had demanded the room. The order was filled, but the boys polished it off just as quickly as the last one, so they ordered another. And another. And another. This is completely ridiculous, Nami exclaimed, watching as all 3 boys ate bowl after bowl after bowl. I know Luffy eats this much, but Sabo and Ace are keeping up with him no problem. Sanji with the kind of fascinated disbelief that came hand in hand with being the chef to one Monkey D. Luffy. Ya know, Usopp said, sooner or later, someone is going to get curious. Right on cue, the door opened and revealed the waitress and the owner. Sir, can you please explain? The owner trailed off when he saw the 3 boys siding around the table without the cloak. Crap, he found out, Ace exclaimed. Run, Sabo yelled. The trio made a break for the window and crashed through the glass, using flags and banners on the side of the building to get to the ground. Stop them. The owner shouted from the window. Bill jumpers. Thieves. Someone grab them. Zoro and Frankie burst out laughing. Way to go, Luffy bro, the cyborg exclaimed between breaths. Dine and dash seems like it would be Luffy's #1 crime, Usopp commented, completely unsurprised. It's those kids again, yelled an officer as they ran by. Someone catch those brats. It seems that Luffy-san is very popular, Brook said. And it looks like this isn't his first time in town, Frankie added. Nami groaned, rubbing her temples. I don't know why I expected anything different. Zoro snorted. Me neither. When the trio passed a man dressed in a fancy suit, the man stopped, eyes going wide. Sabo? He cried in shock. Sabo, is that you? Sabo stopped and the color drained from his face as he looked back to the man. You're still alive, the man exclaimed, please, come home. The Straw Hats paused examining the man as he pleaded with the blonde boy. Who is he? Chopper asked curiously. The others shrugged. Sabo, that man's calling you, Ace said, now looking back as well. Who is he? Luffy asked. Sabo grimaced, face still paler than normal. He must have me confused with someone else. Come on, let's go. Sabo took off. Ace and Luffy exchanged a brief look before running off after him. Please, wait, the man shouted. Why do I get the feeling that something important just happened? Usopp asked thoughtfully, head cocked to the side. The crew exchanged looks. Perhaps it is, Robin said. He did seem to know Sabo. And Sabo seemed to know him. Guess we'll find out if it's important, Zoro said with a shrug. What's wrong? I'm not hiding anything, Sabo exclaimed even as he shifted nervously and didn't make eye contact with either of the other boys. Luffy blinked up at him innocently. Really? The Straw Hats sighed. Their captain was so gullible. Ace rolled his eyes. Of course he is, he said before turning to glare at the blonde. It's obvious you're hiding something. Do you think it's okay to keep secrets between us? Luffy's eyes widened slightly before he stood by Ace and declared in unison with him, spit it out, Sabo. Sabo's eyes shifted between the two of them before turning away. I already told you, I'm not hiding anything. He might be better at lying than Luffy, but he still sucks at it, Sanji said. Nami snorted. Even Usopp tells better lies than that. Yeah, hey. What do you mean, even Usopp? He is only 10, Brook observed. Zoro crossed his arms. I would think he would be better at this given his lifestyle. What's that mean? Chopper asked. It means that Sabo has lived as a thief in the wilderness, Robin explained. One would think to survive such a life, the ability to lie would be necessary. It is, Nami said, and for a moment there were shadows on her face, but they cleared quickly and she exclaimed, I was a better liar at that age. The crew gave her deadpan looks. Wah, Nami Swan is so passionate. Shut it, Love Cook. What was that, shitty swordsman? Little Luffy and Ace both grabbed Sabo by his collar and shook him. Talk, damn it, or I'll make you talk, Ace yelled. Let me go. Sabo choked out as he shoved their hands away. Alright, alright. Ace and Luffy backed off and Sabo leaned back against the tree behind him. He looked between the two dark-haired boys before turning his gaze to the ground. I'm the son of a noble, the blonde muttered. Ace's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open slightly in surprise. Luffy exclaimed, you're the son of a noble? Sabo flinched violently, shoulders hiking up as if to fend off a blow. That explains the crest he had, Robin commented, as the rest of the crew watched with wide eyes. Ace and Luffy blinked before saying in unison, so? You're the ones who are asking, Sabo yelled, annoyed. The crew sighed, completely understanding Sabo's position. The only thing that was throwing them off, the ones that knew him at least, was the fact that Ace was right there next to Luffy. It was odd seeing Ace be anything but polite. It was odd seeing Ace act like Luffy. The number of similarities between them is starting to freak me out, PP nodded next to her. Sabo sighed, sliding down the tree until he was sitting on the ground. The truth is, he said softly, eyes locked on the ground, my parents are still alive. I'm not an orphan. I didn't grow up in Grey Terminal. The man we met today, he's my father. Ace's eyes went wide while Luffy's face remained openly curious. Sabo glanced up at them. I'm sorry for lying to you, he said sincerely. Luffy crossed his arms and gave Sabo a small grin. Well, you apologized, so I forgive you. Zoro sighed. He's so simple. Anyone outside of the crew would have completely missed the amount of fondness in that one, simple statement. To be honest, I'm surprised, Ace said as he turned and walked a couple steps away from them. Why would you do all of this if you're a noble son? Sabo grit his teeth. I had to run away from home. Surprise coated the other two's faces as they turned back to face Sabo, shadows creeping into the blonde's eyes and his hands started shaking. They only care about money and social status, Sabo said, tipping his head forward so that his hat shaded his eyes, not me. To have alienated your own child at such a young age, Brook murmured, tightly gripping his cane. They must be some pretty greedy shits, Sanji agreed. If I don't marry a girl from the royal family, Sabo continued, I'll be crap. I had to study every day, just for that. I was always arguing with my parents because of my poor results in school. For that family, I was nothing more than a nuisance. The blonde paused, attempting to get his trembling under control, before turning to look up at Ace and Luffy. Sorry if I offend you, but even though I had parents, I always felt lonely. Usopp, Brook, and Chopper were in tears at this point, Frankie close behind them. Nami was biting her lip and trying to ignore how full her eyes felt. Zoro, Sanji, and Robin watched the scene with a knowing kind of sadness. The people of Grey Terminal were not like the nobles, Sabo said, crossing his arms, but for me, it was better than life for decades with the nobles. Luffy just stared, surprised by Sabo's little speech. Ace still looked impassive. Now I understand, he murmured. Ace, Luffy, Sabo exclaimed, suddenly jumping up and pointing out to sea wearing a wide grin on his face, surprising the other boys and startling the crew out of their gloomy thoughts. We'll definitely set sail and leave this place. I want to know all about the world and write a book about my adventures. I don't mind having to study navigation. I'll get stronger and I'll become a pirate. Zoro crossed his arms over his chest, a wide smirk on his face. Robin chuckled and Nami and Usopp wore identical grins. Ace and Luffy laughed brightly. I know, Ace replied, you don't need to tell me. I'll be a pirate and I'll fight and fight and fight until I become the most famous. That will be proof that I lived. He looked to the sky, a large grin lighting his face. I don't care if the world doesn't accept me. No matter how much they hate me, I'll become a great pirate and stand above everyone else. I won't run from anyone, or lose to anyone. I'll make sure the world knows my name. And even though Ace seemed so pleased with his dream, it made some of the Straw Hats frown. His wording was off and hinted at things that they did not want to think about. Like how Ace seemed to question his right to life, his very right to exist. Luffy giggled. I see, right. He said, running forward to the edge of the cliff to stand by Ace. He raised his fists in the air, took a deep breath and shouted, "I'm going to be Pirate King." Ace and Sabo's jaws dropped and the Straw Hats couldn't help but laugh at the expressions on their faces, Luffy's joyful laughter mingling with theirs. "You're talking nonsense," Ace sighed in disbelief, scratching his head. Sabo, on the other hand, started laughing. "You're so funny, Luffy. I can't wait to see what happens in the future with you." And there was a gleam in the blonde's eyes that the crew had become very familiar with after being on Luffy's crew. It was anticipation, excitement, fear, awe, and an odd sort of half-faith all rolled into one. It was that strange look that Luffy always inspired in people. That look that said maybe, just maybe, the completely impossible things that came out of the rubber man's mouth just might be the truth, might be real. It was the look people got when they started to hope and believe again. The look they got when they realized that impossible was just a label, a word, that the world used to try and measure reality. The look they got when they understood that nothing is set in stone, nothing is determined by chance unless you let it be. It was the look that people got when they realized that Luffy, that strange, innocent, bottomless pit of an idiot, might actually be able to do it. To make the impossible possible. A sudden thoughtful look crossed Sabo's face. "Wait, it's okay that we all want to be pirates, but it is okay that we all want to be captain?" Ace blinked. "I didn't think about it," Ace admitted. "Sabo, I had planned that you'd be my navigator." Luffy grinned and put his hands on his hips. "You'll be on my ship," he announced, looking pleased with himself. Sabo and Ace turned to Luffy. "I refuse," they shouted in unison. "Eh?" Luffy exclaimed, "Come on, do it, join my crew." "That will never happen." "Yeah, I think the same." "Guess that was one refusal." Luffy couldn't refuse, Sanji said. The others chuckled. "What?" Luffy paused and then tried to look disinterested, failing miserably. "I don't care." "Peefed." Ace laughed. "What was that?" Sabo laughed as well. "You're definitely a funny guy, Luffy." And that was all it took for the three boys to collapse into a fit of giggles. The scene changed and the trio of boys was now crowded around a tree trunk. "What are they doing now?" Usopp wondered. "Those are sake glasses," Zoro observed, nodding towards the three red cups that rested on the tree trunk. "We'll decide future things in the future," Ace said, walking up to the trunk with a bottle in his hand. "Maybe we'll end up on 3 different ships." Luffy blinked. "Did you steal Dayton's liquor?" Ace shot Luffy a mischievous grin before turning to open the bottle. "Did you know? When men drink together, they become brothers," he said, pouring some of the sake into each cup. "Brothers? Really?" Luffy asked, a wide, beaming grin on his face, Sabo grinning just as widely next to him. "We might not be pirates on the same ship, but we'll be united by our bond of brotherhood," Ace said, his own smile sincere with a level of tenderness in it that the members of the crew that knew him associated with his older counterpart. "No matter what we do or where we are, no one will ever break that bond," he exclaimed, taking up a cup. The other two copied him, each taking a cup of their own. "From now on," Ace said, "we're brothers." The trio clinked their glasses together, Luffy and Sabo affirming Ace's words. "Tea, that was so beautiful," Chopper cried. "Those little bros have such a deep bond," Frankie sobbed. Brook cried along with them. "Their bond will keep them united." Such an amazing moment," Usopp exclaimed, tears running down his face. Nami's sweat dropped. "We get it, you guys can calm down now." The four ignored her. "That explains Ace and Luffy's different parents though," Sanji said. Zoro snorted. "It's not like blood makes family anyway." Robin smiled softly. "That it very true," she said, "and sometimes a chosen family can be closer than those who claim the same blood." The crew grinned at each other because they knew it was true. After all, they were living proof. Dogra shook Luffy awake and the rubber boy sat up from where he and Ace had collapsed in a tangled heap. Sabo was sitting off to the side with a book in one hand and a pen in the other. Dogra?" Luffy asked, rubbing the sleep from his eyes with a yawn. "Why'd y'all wake me up so early?" Dogra sighed. "It's already past midday, Luffy." Luffy blinked. "Oh. Nami SFY. Anyway," Dogra continued, turning away to leave, "you have some visitors out front." Luffy's head cocked to the side. "Visitors? Who would be visiting you, Luffy?" Sabo asked. Why would anyone bother? Ace grumbled, hauling himself up. Luffy pouted. Meanie, Ace. Whatever. Ace yawned. Did I fall asleep again? Yup. Sabo chirped with a grin, but at least this time it wasn't in your food. Ace chucked his pillow at the blonde. Shut up. Luffy ignored them and walked to the door. When the Straw Hats saw who was waiting for Luffy outside, they all wore grins that rivaled their captain's. Makino, Luffy cried, running forward to embrace the young woman. She came to see him, Chopper said with a delighted laugh. A lovely lady, Melorine, Sanji sang while twirling. She is a truly lovely lady, Brook said. I wonder if she would let me see her panties? Nami smacked the skeleton upside the head. You aren't even going to ask. Makino laughed and wrapped her arms around Luffy in return. Luffy. You look great. The Mayor Wood Slap said from his place next to Makino. It's been 6 months, so he came to see how you were doing. Luffy grinned at the older man. Hey, Mayor, don't tell Garp-san, Makino said with a wink, putting a finger to her lips. Luffy giggled and put a finger over his lips as well. So you're really living with bandits, Wood Slap observed, a look of disbelief on his face. At least someone thinks it's crazy, Nami deadpanned. You got a problem? Deiden growled. Yes, a big one. You're a bandit, don't give me attitude. That caused some of the Straw Hats to snicker. What did you say? People from Fushia village are really annoying. While the mayor and Deiden continued to argue, Makino clapped her hands together with a wide grin, catching Luffy's attention. I have some presents for you, she said, walking over to her basket as Luffy bounced after her in excitement. I assume Garp-san wouldn't think about these things, ta-da, she said holding up a t-shirt. Here it is, new clothes. Chopper tilted his head to the side. Clothes? Well, she is right, Usopp said. I don't think Garp thought about any of those kinds of things. Luffy didn't have anything but the clothes on his back when he got here. True, Nami commented, but since when has Luffy ever gotten excited over clothes? Wow, great! Little Luffy exclaimed with sparkles in his eyes. Zoro snorted. You stand corrected, Nami facepalmed. Makino giggled. I'm glad you like them. I'll adjust the length so, I'll need you guys too, she said looking past Luffy. The Straw Hats turned to find Ace and Sabo standing in the doorway of the hut, curious and surprised expressions on their faces. Okay, Makino asked. Slowly, Sabo started to smile while Ace stubbornly turned away, arms crossed over his chest. Sabo ran out to them while Ace stayed behind, something hesitant lingering in his eyes. You too, Makino called with an encouraging smile on her face. Reluctantly, Ace walked over to them, hands tucked into his pockets and cheeks dusted pink. Makino adjusted the clothes to each boy's size. When she got to Ace, she held the shirt up to his bare torso. I heard that Ace-kun was mischievous, she said, grinning, but you seem like a good boy. Ace blushed and looked away. And no, I'm not. Ah? Nami cooed. Look at him, he's blushing. Of course he would be, Sanji said. Makino-san is a beautiful lady. Sabo and Luffy were snickering a short distance away. He's so shy, Sabo giggled. You're blushing, Ace, Luffy teased. Perhaps Ace has developed a crush? Robin mussed with a small, amused smile. You jerks! Ace yelled. Oh hey, Makino said, you can't move. Ace calmed, though the blush still painted his cheeks. I'll get you guys later, he muttered. Sabo and Luffy just collapsed into a fit of giggles, the Straw Hat crew joining them. Later, Makino cooked the trio and the bandits dinner. I hope you like it, she said, and with that, everyone tucked in. It was much tamer than the bandits' usual mealtimes. Most likely because of the presence of Makino and the mayor. Meals should be good on the ship, Sabo said between bites. I'm gonna get the best cook first thing when I go out to sea. I'm gonna become a pirate before you do, so just forget it, Ace said smugly. That's not fair, Luffy exclaimed. I'm going to become a pirate first. Suddenly the bandits started freaking out, causing the trio to blink at them in confusion. The sound of a throat clearing behind them made Ace and Luffy pale, and slowly, the pair of them turned to see Garp standing in the doorway. Ah, it's the crazy marine grandpa, Usopp yelled. You're still spouting crap like that? Garp growled. Can't you both understand that you must become marine soldiers? The old man promptly hit both boys over the back of the head, knocking them to the ground. "This guy sets his expectations way too high," Frankie said. How the heck did he come to the conclusion that a bunch of law-breaking bandits was the perfect place to raise them to be Marines? Zoro wondered. If he wants them to be Marines so bad, he probably should have taken them to a base or something, Nami deadpanned. "Squirt," Garp said, turning to Sabo, "you mentioned something about going out to sea too." "He's not Squirt," Luffy exclaimed, suddenly standing in front of Sabo. "He's Sabo. We exchanged cups of sake and pledged to become pirates." The crew face faltered. "He has such a big mouth," Ace grumbled from his place on the floor. "Yes," the Straw Hats said, "yes, he does." "Oh?" Garp said, cracking his knuckles. "That means there are 3 brats who want me to give them a workout." The trio of brothers blinked and started sweating. "You have got to be kidding me. This is insane," Usopp exclaimed, face extremely pale. "TCH. And I thought Luffy was kidding at Water 7, Sanji muttered. Luffy's grandpa is scary," Chopper said, clinging to Robin's leg. The 3 boys huddled together in their room covered in cuts and bruises after Garp's training. "If nothing is done, that old man will kill us tomorrow," Ace hissed. "Even if we survive, he'll keep at it until we give up our dream," Sabo muttered. "I don't want to die," Luffy exclaimed. Ace grinned. "It's time to make up our minds, brothers." What is Ace-san planning?" Brook asked, head tilted to the side curiously. "Don't know, skeleton bro, but that is a plotting face if I ever saw one," Frankie said, arms crossed. Frankie whistled. "Little bros are pretty good builders," he said as the brothers hung a flag in the crow's nest they had built at the top of the tree. It was a pirate flag. A simple crossbones with the letters ASL printed over it. "Woo! Tree Fortress," Chopper exclaimed, eyes shining. The 3 boys looked just as impressed with their handiwork. "Awesome," Luffy said, "it looks just like your design, Sabo." Sabo grinned. "Great work if I may say so myself." Then he noticed Ace's thoughtful look. "What's wrong, Ace?" "This is a hideout," he replied after a moment, "so we gotta set up some traps." Sabo grinned. "All right, I'll think about it. Seriously? Traps?" Nami questioned, not even shocked by this turn of events. "Where are we now?" Zoro asked. "It appears that we have returned to the city," Robin replied, as the crew watched Luffy bounce down a back street, Sabo trailing behind him with an amused expression on his face. "That was so cool," Luffy was saying. "Ace would have loved it. Where is he, anyway?" Sabo shrugged. "Dunno, he said he would meet us in town later." Luffy shrugged. "Oh well." Before the Straw Hats could try and figure out what was happening, they heard a loud laugh from the alley short distance away. Sabo and Luffy started to move towards it curiously until the laughter stopped and a mocking voice spoke up. "If Gold Roger had a son," the voice asked, making the crew freeze, eyes going wide, "why the heck should a monster like that exist?" The crew flinched and could do nothing but watak on that carefully blank expression that even Zoro had trouble reading sometimes. Sabo, on the other hand, had gone very, very pale. "And if he did exist?" another voice asked, this one familiar. "That's Ace," Luffy exclaimed. Sabo grabbed his wrist as he ran forward, halting him in his tracks. "Wait, Luffy," he said, "we should really let Ace handle this on his own." "But he should be killed," came yet another voice. "He should have been killed in the womb. Him and his whore mother," the first voice agreed. "Or a public execution, just like his old man," came a different voice, "and just before he dies he should bow his head and apologize for being born. You should stab a needle in him for every person Roger pissed off. That would be justice." The Straw Hats were frozen in horror, and their horror only grew when they heard Ace's answer. "You're right," said the boy, "the Pirate King's son doesn't deserve to live, but neither do you." Suddenly there was a heavy thud, followed by screaming and cursing. Luffy wrenched himself free of Sabo's grip and ran the short distance to the alleyway. But the fight was already over. Ace was standing over the beaten and broken bodies of 4 grown men, the expression on his face dark and dangerous. It was the expression wore when Luffy had first met him. It was the expression Ace had worn as the Straw Hats watched him try to get rid of Luffy again and again all those months before. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was a look no child should be wearing. But after hearing what they had, the crew couldn't really blame Ace. Because, even if they hadn't known it, those men had been talking about him. Telling him, a boy who had yet to even reach his teens, that he had no right to live. And the Straw Hats knew that, in the end, his blood is what got him killed. The whole world knew. Portgas d'Ace had not been placed up on that high execution platform in the center of Marineford 2 years ago to die for being a formidable pirate in his own right. No, Portgas d'Ace had been sentenced to death for living. He was sentenced to death because he was the son of a pirate, because he was the son of Gold D. Roger. And everyone knew it. The scary part, though, was that most people agreed with it. And what did that say about the state of the world? Luffy sucked in a sharp breath. Ace's head snapped up, eyes going wide, surprise and something that looked suspiciously like fear flashed across his face. What the hell was that? Luffy ground out just as Sabo rounded the corner behind him. The tone made everyone, even the crew, freeze. The pitch of his voice was still way too high, but Luffy's crew knew that tone. They heard that tone many times before, would know what that tone meant anywhere. It was the tone Luffy used when you had just done something he would never, ever forgive you for. The Straw Hats had heard him use it against countless foes before beating them to a bloody pulp. But, judging by the expressions on Ace and Sabo's faces, it was not something they were familiar with. What gives you the right to decide something like that? Luffy continued. Sabo stepped forward and tugged Luffy's shoulder. Luffy. Luffy shrugged the blonde off and glared at Ace. It was the glare that seemed to snap Ace out of his trance. The right? He scoffed. I don't need it, it's true. Sabo frowned. Ace, Sabo knows. Zoro announced suddenly in the crew's tense silence, his single eye locked on the small boy. Indeed, Robin agreed, but it would appear that Luffy does not. Somehow, I don't think knowing would change his feelings on the situation, Usopp muttered. Sanji grimaced. Shitty captain would still be pissed as hell, he said. And why do you get to decide that? Luffy pressed, his glare never faltering. Because it's true. Ace shouted furiously, eyes dark with anger. And before anyone could register what happened, Luffy had closed the distance between them and punched the older boy across the jaw. Ace, completely caught off guard, crashed to the ground. Sabo's eyes widened in shock. It was the first time Luffy had managed to land an actual hit on either of them. And it wasn't a feeble little nudge either. No, Luffy a full-out decked Ace. His cheek was red and he stared at the sky in surprise, making no effort to get up. You don't get to decide that, Luffy yelled. You don't get to say who lives or dies. Neither do they. The rubber boy gestured to the thugs on the ground. No one does. And then the anger was back and Ace jumped up, getting ready to charge Luffy until Sabo grabbed him and held him back. Ace, stop it, Sabo called, trying to calm Ace down. Who are you to tell me what I can or can't think? Ace shouted, struggling to get out of Sabo's hold and failing. I can think the Pirate King's son should die if I want. Then you're an idiot, Luffy exploded. Life is a right, not a privilege. If the Pirate King had a son, I think he should live, and if I ever meet him I'm going to tell him that. Ace had frozen in Sabo's arms, gone completely still. His eyes were wide and his mouth hung open. Sabo looked between them, not letting Ace go, but not knowing who he should try and talk down first. Luffy acted before he could make an attempt. Stupid Ace, he muttered before turning on his heel and running off. That was, Nami trailed off, unable to find a word to describe what they had just witnessed. The shadow the Pirate King casts is a long one, it seems, Robin said solemnly, even in death. So Ace actually believes, Usopp asked in disbelief. So it would seem, Usopp-san, Brook said softly. It explains why Ace seems to hate everything, Sanji muttered, and why he has no self-preservation. Why preserve something that has no right to be there in the first place, Zoro said, his tone indifferent even though his hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. Luffy sat on the cliff that overlooked the sea, the place the brothers had spoken their dreams. Luffy. Sabo's voice came from behind him, but Luffy didn't turn to face him. The blonde sighed. Luffy, it's been a whole day, come home. No, Luffy bro has been angry this entire time? Frankie asked in surprise. After all, they had seen Luffy angry over arguments before, but he couldn't hold a grudge to save his life. That they knew of at least. It appears that way, Robin answered. Sabo came and sat next to the rubber boy, who kept his eyes stubbornly locked on the sea. It's almost time for dinner. I'm not hungry, Luffy said stiffly. The Straw Hat's jaws dropped. Luffy's not hungry. Someone call a doctor, Chopper yelled frantically. It's odd to see him this serious at such a young age, Nami commented. Sabo groaned. Lu, how long are you going to stay mad? Luffy frowned. Forever, he said stubbornly. The blonde ran a hand over his face. Look, Luffy, he said softly, his tone making the younger boy blink and finally look at him. Don't be too mad at him, okay? This is hard for him. I don't care, Luffy said bluntly, he doesn't have the right to say what he did. I know, Sabo placated, I don't agree with him, but it's something he's convinced of. Why? It's stupid. Why should someone die just for being born? It's complicated, the blonde answered after a moment of silence. The crew could see the struggle in his eyes. He wanted to tell Luffy, make him understand, but at the same time he didn't want to betray Ace's trust. Luffy pouted and opened his mouth to say something, but before he could a loud grumble came from his stomach. Sabo chuckled. Come on, Lu, come back and have dinner. Fine, Luffy grumbled, but I'm not talking to Ace. Alright, Sabo said with a laugh. The three boys sat at the base of the tree their home was in around a small fire. Luffy sat further away from the other two, his back facing the fire so that he could not see his brothers. The rubber boy drew his knees to his chest and frowned at the trees from his perch atop one of the tree's many large roots. Wellop said. No kidding, Zoro muttered. Sabo completely ignored the tension and made no move to initiate any kind of discussion. He did, however, give Ace a rather pointed look. The boy rolled his eyes and scowled, but got up and started making his way towards Luffy. As soon as his back was to Sabo, his scowl vanished, replaced by an anxious expression. Hey, Luffy, he said as he climbed up behind the rubber boy. Luffy's back tensed. I'm not talking to you, he said immediately. Ace shifted, actually looking nervous. Did you mean it? He asked, voice uncharacteristically soft. What you said about Roger's son, did you mean it? If I was talking to you, which I'm not, Luffy said, making his future crew roll their eyes despite the seriousness of the situation. I tell you that I meant every word. But Roger is a demon, Ace exclaimed. So? Luffy asked. I'm a monster too. And so is Shanks as captain. It doesn't mean anything. I don't understand, Ace said, something broken and desperate in his voice. Why don't you hate him, or his child? I have no reason to, Luffy replied simply, still not looking at Ace. Why would I hate anyone just for living? That's stupid. Besides, I want to be Pirate King just like Roger was. It would be dumb to hate him for having the freedom I want. Unbelievable, Nami muttered, stuck somewhere between awe and disbelief. Since when is he this insightful? Roger's son has just as much right to live as anyone else and I don't, Ace shouted over him, making Luffy turn to him with wide eyes. I don't deserve to live. I don't, and it's his fault. He didn't even stick around to protect me or the woman who died giving birth to me. He knew the world would hate me and he let me be born anyway. He's a bastard and he deserved to die. Ace was panting hard by the end of his outburst, shoulders shaking, fists clenched, his head turned toward the ground and eyes squeezed shut so that he didn't have to look at Luffy. The Straw Hats were too shocked by Ace's anger to say anything. And, for a long moment, Luffy was silent, doing nothing but staring blankly at Ace's trembling form. So you're Roger's son, Luffy murmured softly, thoughtfully, making Ace flinch. Hey, Ace. And Luffy waited until Ace had looked at him even if it was just him peeking through his hair, before grinning widely, showing all of his teeth. I think you should leave. Ace's head snapped up at that, eyes wide in disbelief and a little hope. Luffy just continued to smile at him. Even when he started trembling, even when his eyes started filling with tears, even when a strangled sob escaped his throat, even when he sank to the ground in front of the younger boy and tried to rein himself in. Luffy just smiled softly at him and Ace cannot find a lie in his eyes. And then Luffy was just there, arms wrapped around Ace and cradling his shaking form. Silly Ace, Luffy said, are you crying? Shut up, Ace choked out, but there was no bite in it as he leaned into Luffy's hold and tightly gripped the smaller boy's shirt. She. And when he looked up, Luffy saw Sabo smile at them from his place by the fire. Most of the Straw Hats were in tears at this point. Even Robin's normally calm expression had cracked some, tears gathering in her eyes. She could understand Ace's plight better than any of her other crewmates. "I believe this is the point at which Luffy won Ace over, so to speak," she said softly so as not to disrupt the moment. "Yeah," Nami said softly, wiping her eyes. "Are you sure about this, Ace?" Sabo asked nervously. Ace rolled his eyes. "It's fine, Sabo. Quit worrying so much." "I don't know," Usopp said, looking at their surroundings warily. "I'm kinda with Sabo on this one." The trio of brothers was back in the city, in a shadier part of town. They looked to be walking around the back alleyways, sticking to the shadows even though no one was around. "This Sabo kid seems to be the brains of the operations," Sanji drawled. "I've noticed that too," Chopper commented. "He's so much calmer than the other two." "Still pretty wild though," Zoro added. "He's nicer to Luffy." "Sabo and Ikki breaks up their fights," Frankie said. "Someone has to," Nami muttered. "Hey, Ace," Luffy called loudly from behind them. Ace immediately dove on the smaller boy, slamming his hands on his mouth. "Shut up, you rubber idiot." "Hey, I heard something over there. Shit, it's too late, we're caught," Sabo exclaimed. "TCH. Good going, moron," Ace growled, knocking Luffy over the head. "Sorry," Luffy said, grinning and not sounding at all apologetic. Ace just sighed. "Whatever, plan B," he said. Sabo nodded, on it. The blonde ran in one direction, while Ace took off in another. "Come on, Lou," he called over his shoulder. "What the heck are they doing?" Usopp asked. "How the hell are we supposed to know?" asked Zoro with a scowl. "With Luffy-san, it truly could be anything," Brook said. Luffy followed Ace to an old ladder and they used it to climb to the roof of the building. They looked around briefly before hearing a shout from below. "You guys are pathetic. My grandmother can run faster than you losers." Ace grinned. "And there's Sabo." Luffy nodded. "Yup." They looked at each other with identical grins that promised mayhem before sprinting over the rooftops in the direction of Sabo's voice. "Did that look make anyone else fear for their sanity?" Nami stuttered. Scary." Usopp and Chopper cried. "Yo ho 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 ho. They do seem to be having fun, whatever it is they're doing," Brook said. The two boys reached the edge of the roof and peered over the edge. Sabo had been backed into a corner. Ace nodded to Luffy, who lay down on his stomach at the edge of the roof. Ace crouched down next to him. One hand wrapping around the rubber boy's ankle, the other wrapped tightly around his metal pipe staff. "Sabo," one of the thugs said, "who gave you permission to enter our territory?" Sabo smirked. "Your territory?" Sabo laughed. "Huh? You guys are so full of it, stop talking nonsense and bring it on." The man in front sneered. "Fine," he growled as he and the others started forward, "but we ain't going easy on ya cause ya are a kid." Ace jumped off the roof then, still holding on to Luffy's leg, which stretched out like a rope as Ace swung down to the group below. "That's actually pretty smart of them," Sanji said. "Luffy might not be able to control his powers yet," Usopp commented, "but it looks like they can still use them." Ace let go of Luffy's leg and slammed into the closest thug, smacking the next one with his pipe. "Ace!" They cried out in shock. "Pay attention," Sabo called with a grin, easily taking out the guy closest to him. Luffy meanwhile was launched off the building by the recoil from his legs snapping back in place. "Then again," Usopp said, "maybe not." The rubber boy fell out of the sky and right on top of one of the thugs. He took only a moment to recover before he joined the fray, fighting alongside his brothers. Frankie whistled. Luffy bro and his Anikis fight well together. It was true. The trio was winning against a group of grown men. It wasn't anything new really. The crew had already seen numerous times how resourceful each of the boys were in their own rights. But this is the first time they had seen the three boys fight together. And despite the arguments and the rough start they had, the three worked well together. Suddenly, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the alley, making everyone freeze. Luffy flew back and crumpled to the ground in a heap. "Luffy!" Sabo yelled in panic. "But Luffy's bulletproof," Chopper said, confused at Sabo's reaction, "isn't he?" "He is," Nami nodded in confirmation. "Yeah," Zoro grunted, crossing his arms, "but how exactly do you find something like that out?" Ace had frozen, wide eyes on Luffy's fallen form. "That's enough of that," a voice said. The two boys turned and saw a man walk forward, the others stepping out of his way. He was tall, but thin. He didn't look like much of anything, but he wore a pistol in one hand, the weapon still smoking from the last shot. Ace's face darkened and his grip on his pipe tightened to the point that his knuckles turned white under the pressure. "You bastard!" The man pointed the gun at Ace and Sabo lurched forward to grab him before he could do anything stupid. Now, the man drawled, "Let's not do anything too hasty." "Isn't shooting a child hasty?" Usopp and Nami yelled. Ace and Sabo glared at the man, who just grinned down at them mockingly. "We can't really afford for you guys to keep messing around in our territory, see?" the man said, "So, as fun as it's been, this is the last time we'll see each other." He cocked the gun and pulled the trigger before either boy could say anything in response. But the bullet never met its intended target, because Luffy was suddenly there, standing in front of the two boys, arms thrown out and a glare on his face. The bullet hit him square in the chest, forcing him back a few steps. Then, as the Straw Hats had seen so many times before, the bullet was bounced back the way it came, carving a thin gash into the man's cheek. "That could have hurt me," Luffy yelled angrily into the dead silence. What is he?" one of the thugs asked. Little Luffy just turned to him, stuck out his tongue. "I'm a monster, duh," he said bluntly. That caused everyone to snap out of their stupor. They began panicking and screaming things like, "demon," and "monster," as they scrambled to get away. Ace, on the other hand, had gone straight for the man with the gun and began beating him to a bloody pulp while Sabo took out the others. Throughout the entire thing, Luffy just smiled. "And that," Ace said as he brought his pipe straight down on the man's head with a crack, "is for shooting my little brother." The man collapsed in a heap and Luffy giggled. Ace turned on him next. "And you?" he yelled, whacking Luffy over the head with his fist. "What the hell were you thinking?" "But Ace," Luffy whined, holding his head, "bullets don't work on me." "And when the fuck did you figure that out?" "5 minutes ago," was the blunt answer. Ace opened his mouth, no doubt to yell something else, when Sabo stepped between them holding his hands out in a placating manner. Hey, he said, "it's fine right? But Ace is being mean," Luffy whined. "Why you, nah, he was just worried about you," Sabo said matter-of-factly. "He thought you were hurt, or dead." The blonde's expression changed slightly at that, small shadows forming behind his eyes and Ace flinched. Luffy's eyes, on the other hand, had gone wide. "Ace was worried about me?" Ace's cheeks flushed. "No," he protested loudly, turning away as he began to walk out of the alley. "Who would worry about you? You're just a whiny crybaby." Luffy blinked at Sabo, who grinned widely and winked at the rubber boy. "That's Ace talk for, please don't ever scare me like that again," he stage whispered. "Shut up, Sabo," Luffy and his crew laughed. "That was amazing," Luffy exclaimed with a giggle. "We made it through the storm." Sabo sighed. "Our base was wrecked though." Ace shrugged. "It's not that big a deal," he said. "We just need to get some more wood and we can fix it." Luffy ran in front of the other two as they walked and turned to face them, walking backwards. "I want a telescope." Ace rolled his eyes. "Dumbass, you think something like that's just going to fall out of the sky?" Knowing Luffy's luck, Nami asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's entirely possible," Usopp and Chopper said in unison. Sabo chuckled. "In that case, I'd rather find a cannon." "If a cannon fell out of the sky, that'd be awesome," Luffy exclaimed with a grin. The three of them laughed, as they stepped into Grade Terminal and began rummaging through the mountains of garbage, looking for anything usable. "It's no use, Ace," Luffy whined, "I can't find a telescope." "Luffy," Ace groaned. "Why are you looking for a telescope? Go find some usable wood instead." "He'll keep looking for a telescope," Sanji said. "Yep," Usopp nodded. "Keep looking," Chopper said. "Yo ho 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 ho, Luffy-san really wants that telescope," Brook said. "But Ace," Luffy whined. Ace sighed. "Whatever. Let's go find Sabo. Maybe he found something." The two wandered through the trash looking for their brother. After a few minutes, Ace suddenly grabbed Luffy and pulled him down, slapping a hand over the boy's mouth before he could make a sound. Luffy looked up at him in confusion and Ace quietly put a finger to his lips and then pointed up. The younger nodded and the two began to climb the trash heap. "Ah, what are they doing now?" Frankie asked. Ace seems on edge, Zoro said, his eye narrowed. When the two reached the top of the pile, they saw Sabo on the other side. He was surrounded by a bunch of thugs. One of them was decked out in a pirate captain's coat. Pirates? Chopper asked. You don't think? Nami started slowly. Hey, don't hurt him now, the man in the coat said. The others began to close in around Sabo and Ace began to look around. Nudging Luffy, he pointed to a nearby barrel. Sabo kicked the guy who tried to grab him in the face. You wanna fight, bastard? The barrel slammed into the next guy that tried to grab Sabo from behind, and Ace and Luffy appeared at Sabo's back, pipe staffs in hand. Ace. Luffy. Sabo cried with a grin. Ace smirked. You alright, Sabo? Sabo nodded. If the three of us work together, then these guys aren't scary at all. That's right. Luffy cried, throwing his hands in the air. You little brats, cried one of the men. To finish the fight quickly, Ace said, we just have to go for the captain. Sabo dropped the supplies he'd gathered, and together, the three of them charged the pirates. They easily took out the men in front of them. Ya no, Usopp said, the whole taking out scary looking grown men is not a thing that normal kids should be doing. Explains a lot about Luffy then, huh? Zoro smirked. Nami rolled her eyes. Normal kids would not last this long or win this many fights with grown men. She deadpanned. Luffy and his brothers are not normal. They're super, Frankie exclaimed, striking a pose. The man in the pirate coat took out a gun and fired right in front of Ace's feet. The boys immediately separated. Ace and Sabo going to the right, Luffy diving to the left. Alright, that's enough, the pirate said, stay where you are. I'm not scared of a gun. Ace stared before he and Sabo were both grabbed from behind. Damn it, let go. Another was pinning Luffy to the ground. Move, the little rubber boy yelled, or I'll send you flying. They got caught. Usopp yelled. Chopper shifted nervously. They'll be fine, right? Perhaps, Robin said quietly. Let me go, you bastards, Sabo yelled, struggling to free himself. Suddenly, the blonde froze, eyes going wide and face paling. Ace did the same soon after when he saw what Sabo was looking at. Are those soldiers? Nami asked. The crew narrowed their eyes and tensed. Something doesn't feel right about this, Sanji muttered. A small troop of armed, uniformed men was marching towards them. They came to a stop in front of them and parted, letting a finely dressed man pass. That is the gentleman they met in town, Brook observed, gripping his cane nervously, Sabo's father. Now I really don't have a good feeling about this, Sanji said. Looks like we came at the right time, the noble said. Sabo shrank back slightly. Father, he whispered. And that one word was filled with so much dread that it made the Straw Hat's hair stand on end. Ace and Luffy's eyes widened and they gasped softly. Master, the lead pirate said, he doesn't have a single scratch on him. Did he just call him Master? Nami asked in disgust. The crew's faces had all twisted into various forms of disbelief, anger, and disgust. It would appear that this group of pirates serves the nobility, Robin said, her calm face marred with a displeased frown, and since there is only one crew land and never leaves, this must be Blue Jam's crew. Which means the shitty asshole sucking up to those bastard nobles must be Blue Jam, Sanji sneered. What a shitty name. What kind of pirate stays in one place to work like a dog for a noble? Brook asked, furious. These pirates were an absolute disgrace to the name. It's kinda like Kuro, Usopp said thoughtfully. He gave up the sea and pirating for status and money. Or at least he tried to anyway. Kuro? Chopper asked. Luffy hated that guy, Zoro said. He never even considered him a pirate, just some second-rate dirtbag. I remember that, Nami said with a frown. Maybe this was why Luffy hated him this much, because he reminded him of Blue Jam? Don't know, Zoro shrugged. But at least Kuro was going to be in charge. This is just, the swordsman trailed off with a grimace. These guys are not super, Frankie said, crossing his arms. Why the hell would they lower themselves to servants? Probably money, Nami said, but I don't know how money can be worth working for someone like that, she spat. The rest nodded their agreement. Hey, Blue Jam called. The pirate holding Sabo started to walk forward and Sabo renewed his struggles. Let go, Sabo, Ace called. I see, the noble said. It must be because of these two? They led Sabo down a path of evil? A path of what? Several of the crew yelled in outrage. That asshole! Nami seethed. Give Sabo back, Luffy yelled from his place on the ground. The noble sneered. What do you mean, give him back? Sabo is my child. Children are not property, Brook growled. It is the responsibility of every child to live according to the will of the parents who gave him life, the noble continued. You have some nerve, lying to Sabo and convincing him to run away from home. No wonder Sabo ran away, Sanji muttered. He's so fucking pretentious I think I might hurl. I'd run away too, Chopper said with a frown. This guy is nuts, Usopp exclaimed. Just a measly pair of kids like you. Are you trying to steal my fortune? The noble asked. What was that, you bastard? Ace yelled furiously. Seriously, what the hell is up with this guy? Frankie asked. This is the mindset of the nobility, Robin answered indifferently, the slight frown on her face the only outward sign on her anger. The pirate holding Ace grabbed the back of his neck and slammed his face down into the ground. Blood spattered, some of it catching the noble in the face. Hey now, pirate, he said, taking out a handkerchief and wiping his cheek. Be careful how you handle these children. You got some of that inferior filth's blood on my face. The Straw Hats were shaking with rage at this point. They had hands on weapons and were unconsciously in battle stances. If the crew ever met this man in person, it was becoming highly likely that he would not live to tell about it. Ace! Luffy called out in worry. Sabo finally slipped out of his captor's hold. Please, stop, he said, nobody deceived me. It was my choice to leave home. Just be quiet, his father shouted. Hey! Two of the soldiers stepped forward and took hold of Sabo's shoulders. I trust that you pirates will take care of the others, the noble said. Of course we will, master, Bluejam said. We've received payment after all. Rest assured, I'll finish these two off so that they will never bother your child again. Sabo's eyes went wide. Wait a second, Bluejam, he called before turning to his father, desperation leaking into his voice. Father, it's all right. I understand. What do you understand? He asked. Sabo pressed his lips together as he struggled with the words. Don't do it, Sabo, Ace yelled, eyes wide with realization. I'll do whatever you ask of me, Sabo forced out. I'll live just like you tell me to, so don't hurt these two. That's all I ask. Please, they're my irreplaceable brothers. Luffy's eyes widened. Sabo, Ace whispered. In that case, the noble said, come back home, now. Stop with this ridiculous pirate game right now. Sabo swallowed harshly and clenched his fists at his sides. He isn't, Nami whispered in denial. Sabo turned and began to walk away, eyes shaded by his hat. He is, Brook said. Sabo Iniki is going to sacrifice himself for his brothers, Frankie murmured. Sabo! Don't walk away, Ace yelled. The pirate above him slammed him back down. Be quiet. Sabo, just run, Ace screamed anyway, something desperate beginning to creep into his voice. We'll be fine. We were going to our freedom together, remember? Sabo, don't go. Luffy begged, looking for all the world like someone was cutting his heart out. Are you going to let it end like this? Ace yelled, anger starting to take over. Sabo still didn't answer. Sabo, Ace yelled. Sabo began to cry, tears streaming down his face, but he still refused to face his brothers. He just let the soldiers and his father begin to herd him away. Sabo, Luffy screamed, struggling to free himself. The crew shuddered. They knew that tone. They had only heard it once before, only once, at Sabaody as they had each been ripped away from him one by one. As Sabo was led away something fell out of his coat. The crew leaned over to see it. It's a telescope, Chopper said softly. He must have found it for Luffy, Usopp whispered. Before anyone else could notice it, though, one of the soldiers stepped on it, crushing it under his foot. Sabo! Ace cried in one last, desperate scream. Sabo never turned back as he was led into the city. If we ever meet that guy, I'm slicing him up, Zoro growled, hands on his swords. Not if I kick him first, Sanji snarled. You don't think that Sabo is still there, do you? Chopper asked timidly, shaken by what he had just seen. I don't know, Chopper, Robin answered softly. Where are we now? Usopp asked. Wherever we are, it's a complete dump, Nami said with a grimace as she looked around. Perhaps we are still in Grey Terminal? Robin offered. Those nobles have it made, huh? Blue Jam said, taking a swig of liquor from the bottle he was holding. Ace and Luffy were tied up on the floor, glaring up at the pirate. You have to be born of noble blood to be an aristocrat. They're born under the star of good fortune. I'd switch places with him if I could. I wish I'd been born an aristocrat. Sanji scowled. Is this guy serious? You kids think so too, right? Blue Jam continued. They look down on all of us and think we're trash, while they live their proud, carefree lives. Wouldn't you say he's better off living as a noble? What the hell are you trying to say? Ace glared. Pirates are better. Luffy yelled. Sabo says so too. Blue Jam gave the boy a look of amused pity. I feel sorry for you too, he said. Untie them. One of the pirates stepped forward and released the boys. Ace immediately put himself between Luffy and Blue Jam, his dark glare never once faltering. Luffy, of course, refused to be sheltered and stepped up next to Ace, though he hovered close. Why do you think a child of a noble would leave Hightown and go to Grey Terminal? Blue Jam asked. All nobles are the same, whether they be kids or adults. There's no doubt he thought we were all fools. In his heart of hearts, he probably despises you too. Don't be stupid, Ace yelled, clearly enraged. Sabo isn't like that. Yeah, Luffy shouted, he's our brother. Blue Jam chuckled. Sorry to break this to you, but you two will never see your brother again. If you're planning on trying, I've got no choice but to kill you right now. If you think he's your brother, then it's better for him too if you left him alone. Ace seemed to be surprised by this, but Luffy wasn't convinced. Sabo hates Hightown, he yelled, angry at anyone for suggesting otherwise. Luffy-san is very upset, Brook pointed out. TCH, wouldn't you be? Zoro asked. Brook nodded in agreement. I would indeed, the skeleton said, but I would expect Ace-san to be more upset. Ace does seem to have a bigger temper, Nami said. Thorok agreed, but Ace-san has known Sabo-san longer. Yet it is Luffy-san who seems more convinced of what Sabo has told them. The Straw Hats blinked at that. That's true, Robin murmured, observing the scene before them. Ace appears to be considering Blue Jam's words. Wait, you're saying that he would believe this creep over his own brother? Usopp asked in disbelief. Robin didn't say anything, but her lips pressed into a thin line. Maybe Ace Aniki just isn't sure what to think, Frankie offered. Just forget all about that, Blue Jam dismissed, with a casual wave of his hand. He's better off this way. You'll understand when you're grown up. He paused for a moment. We've had our differences in the past, what with that Porkamies incident, but what's past is past. Or rather, I like strong guys like you. So, I've got a suggestion for you. It's not a half-bad deal. A deal? Chopper asked, confused. Ace and Luffy looked equally confused. I'm short on men. Will you help me with a job? Blue Jam asked with a grin as the boys blinked up at him in surprise. Oh, it's a simple job. There's nothing dangerous about it. I got a map of Grey Terminal here. You got to carry some goods to the spot marked with an X, that's all. Are you up for it? Is he serious? Usopp asked. After everything that's happened, he wants them to work with them? Because that isn't creepy and suspicious, Nami deadpanned. What would they be carrying? Chopper asked. Treasure. Maybe weapons, Frankie said. It could be drugs, Robin offered, or some other kind of substance. Perhaps it is panties? Brook asked. This is serious. Nami yelled, whacking him over the head. Luffy scowled and opened his mouth, no doubt to yell no in Blue Jam's face, but Ace beat him to it. Alright, Ace said calmly, how much will you pay us? He's agreeing. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper screeched in unison. My, this is a turn of events, Robin mused. And knowing Luffy, it's probably going to go badly, Sanji said. The boys were carrying small crates through the terminal, Blue Jam's pirates with them carrying crates as well. Ace and Luffy stuck close. Luffy was clearly unhappy, a small frown etched onto his normally smiling face. Ace paid him no mind though, eyeing the men around them suspiciously as they did their work. Ace, Luffy whined softly, I don't like it when Sabo's not around. Ace's eyes flicked briefly to the rubber boy before facing forward again. Deal with it, he said harshly before softening slightly and sighing, I want to go get Sabo too. I don't know what would really make Sabo happy. I don't really think Sabo is ever going to be happy in Hightown, Nami muttered. Let's just see how things go, Ace continued. He's strong. If he really hates it there, he'll come back to us. We've got to keep collecting the pirate fund in case that happens. Well, he's not totally wrong, Usopp said, crossing his arms. Sabo could just run away again. He could, Zoro agreed, but he might not. Why wouldn't he, Zoro? Chopper asked. The reason he left was to protect Ace and Luffy, Nami explained. If he thinks that returning to them might put them in danger, she trailed off with a shrug. Sabo-san will not return if he thinks it will put Ace-san and Luffy-san in danger, Brook said. So we're in a catch-22, Sanji concluded. Ace thinks that Sabo will come back if he hates Hightown, and Sabo thinks he can't go back because it will endanger Ace and Luffy. Nami groaned and rubbed her temples. So basically Sabo is just going to stay in Hightown. Pretty much, Zoro said with a shrug. Nami sighed. Great. It was night and the boys were back in their tree fort. Ace was curled into a ball under his sheets facing away from Luffy. But Luffy didn't look like he was even trying to sleep. There was a frown on his face and a sad gleam in his eyes as he stared at something nailed to the wall. Are those? Sanji started. When the crew looked closer, they saw that the 3 red sake glasses the trio of boys had made their pledge of brotherhood with were hanging in a small net bag. I wonder, how Sabo's doing, Luffy said into the quiet night. There was a certain tone to his voice that made the crew snap to attention. It wasn't a tone they heard often or one they ever confronted directly, but it was one they knew. Just like they knew all the other moods of their captain when push came to shove. Luffy was hurting. Not the physical kind of hurt, but the emotional kind. His heart was hurting. Shut up, Ace said tonelessly from his spot. Go to sleep. We promised we'd forget about Sabo for now. Maybe he's better off. Luffy tore his eyes away from the cups to look at Ace. He stared at his older brother's back with a blank face for a long moment. He didn't say anything, didn't make a sound. Just stared quietly until his frown came back and he turned back to the cups. From now on, we're brothers. Ace's voice echoed in Luffy's head as he finally closed his eyes and turned on his side, curling up to sleep. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about this, Nami said quietly. Zoro raised an eyebrow. Only now? Nami shrugged somewhat defensively. It's just at this rate, Sabo will be stuck in Hightown forever. Ace is in denial. And Luffy is starting to get depressed. Not to mention the fact that Blue Jam and his crew work like dogs for the nobles, Sanji added. Usopp nodded. And anything involving nobles just has disaster written all over it. TCH. That's an understatement, Zoro muttered. Luffy sighed softly. Sabo. You're going to burn Grey Terminal? Ace yelled, face white with horror and anger. Why would you do that? Wait, they're going to do what? Nami asked with wide eyes. Don't scream, you fool, Blue Jam hissed. We can't let anyone know about this. This is serious. We gotta tell everyone. He's a bad guy, just as I thought. Luffy cried, glaring up at the pirate. I told you to pipe down, hold them down, Blue Jam ordered. It wasn't my idea. Not his idea? Someone else told him to burn the terminal? Usopp asked, an edge of panic in his voice. So it would seem, Robin said thoughtfully, and as we know that Blue Jam has been employed by the nobility in the past, it would not be unreasonable to assume that he is under their instruction now. But why would the nobles want to burn the terminal? Chopper asked. It's just a trash heap. Yes, Robin agreed, but given the condition of the city in relation to the terminal, there is a very obvious difference, even in Edgetown. Not to mention the people that live here. And remember when Luffy, Ace, and Sabo snuck in? Zoro asked. No one went near them. And these people here are at least 10 times worse off than that, Nami added. Robin nodded. Which means that in all likely, the people of Goa do not see these people as anything more than the trash they live among. The oil and explosives you planted yesterday are going to be used to make a fire that'll exterminate all the people here, Blue Jam continued, confirming the Straw Hats' fears and causing the boys' eyes to snap up to the pirates. Horror reflected on their faces. I guess you're just children after all. Getting upset like this. It has nothing to do with them being children, Brooke said quietly, shaking with anger. Any decent human being would be horrified by such a meaningless loss of life. Frankie grimaced. Unfortunately, Skeleton Bro, nobles aren't decent. Nor are most pirates, Nami added with distaste. No, Luffy whispered. Are you out of your mind? Ace hissed. Most likely, Sanji scowled. Blue Jam just chuckled at their reactions. But now that you know about the plan, I can't let you go. Ace and Luffy jerked in their captors' grips, tensing and watching the pirate captain warily as he stepped closer to them and leaned down to their eye level. I want to know something before the fire, he said. Do you have some treasure hidden somewhere? The boys twitched, but didn't answer. Blue Jam grinned. Care to tell me where? Why thing? Just glaring silently at the man. Luffy was angry, but the look on Ace's face promised death. Blue Jam shrugged, only feeling slight disappointment. Oh well, he sighed, fine, don't tell me. Tie them to the ship, he ordered, they can burn with the rest of the garbage. What? Screeched the Straw Hats. That's insane, Frankie yelled. He would just leave 2 kids to die? Chopper shrieked in fury. It's not that surprising, Zoro growled, swords halfway drawn out of reflex as he watched his little captain and Ace being tied up, but it doesn't make my desire to kill this bastard any less. That is something we can agree on, Sanji said, one of his legs bouncing nervously like he was ready to raise it for a kick at any second. As soon as the boys were tied securely to a wooden pole, the pirates left. It was only minutes later that the explosions started throughout the terminal. And, of course, the fire spread quickly. The crew could do nothing but watch nervously as their captain and his brother struggled furiously to escape their bonds. Smoke covered the already darkening sky, the flames making everything impossibly bright. At this rate, even their bones will be nothing but ash, Robin observed. Not the time, Usopp yelled. Behind them the pirate ship began to burn. Ace was sawing furiously at their bonds with a broken piece of glass. It's hot, Luffy cried, it's hot. Just then the ropes snapped and Luffy crashed to ground face first. Yes, Ace cried in triumph, though it was short-lived. Damn. We didn't want to be involved in this, he cursed. We can't get away, Luffy cried, flailing in panic on the ground. I don't want to die. I'll leave you behind if you don't stop complaining, Ace yelled furiously. Seriously, Ace? Nami asked. He couldn't have been a little more gentle. Zoro snorted. It's not really a situation for gentle, Nami. Besides, Usopp said, Ace isn't really a gentle person. To the crew's surprise, Luffy clammed up immediately. It's not hot, he said. Come on, idiot, Ace said, grabbing Luffy's wrist and hauling him up. The 2 boys grabbed their discarded pipe staffs and made a run for it. Whoa, it's hot, Luffy complained as he followed Ace, before blinking and changing his mind. No it's not. The crew sighed. Leave it to Luffy bro, Frankie said. He seems to be focusing more on not panicking, Brook said thoughtfully. I can't breathe, Luffy coughed. Yes, I can. The air is hot. No, it's not. Ace briefly glanced over his shoulder at Luffy. It's gonna be alright, Ace said in a firm, unusually gentle voice. I'm here with you. I wonder if those old men escaped safely, Luffy muttered as they ran. This is no time to be concerned about others, Luffy, Ace shouted as he dove out of the way some falling debris. But Luffy is always worried about others, Usopp said. I do not think Luffy-san knows how to not be concerned about others, Brook said, his skeletal face somehow smiling. Ace suddenly started coughing. Damn it, he whispered hoarsely, I don't even know where I am. This is bad, Chopper murmured worriedly, they're breathing in too much smoke. Who said that you brats could get away? A voice called. Ace and Luffy spun around, eyes wide in panic when they saw Blue Jam and his crew closing in on them. Blue Jam! Luffy cried. Why are you still here after setting the fire? Ace asked, obviously trying to stall as he dragged Luffy back, eyes flitting around searching for an escape route. You were supposed to have escaped by now. I wonder why they haven't, Sanji said, you'd think they'd be long gone by now. They're the one who set the fire. Didn't they already have an escape route in place or something? Usopp asked in panicked confusion. Maybe it failed, Robin offered. Shut up, you little shit, Blue Jam shouted, losing his normally cool and calm demeanor, before suddenly grinning. We're hopeless, you know. We have an unforeseen dilemma. Humans are strange creatures. When you hit rock bottom, you can't stop laughing, he said and began to do just that, his crew joining him. The sound was dark and twisted, making the crew tense nervously. Something was wrong. They're acting weird, Luffy whispered, drawing closer to Ace. What the hell is wrong with them? Zoro asked. Ace suddenly paled in realization. Let's go, Luffy. Don't let them, Blue Jam said calmly as the boys turned tail and ran. The pirate crew closed in around them, cutting off any possible escape route. Ace glared at them, he and Luffy tense as they turned back to face Blue Jam. We worked together, we're friends, the captain said, smiling crookedly, a crazy gleam in his eyes. We had to die together. He's insane, Nami exclaimed, fists clenched at her sides, worry clear on her face. When you have nothing left to lose, Robin murmured. We don't want to die with you, Ace yelled furiously, not in a million years. Blue Jam just kept grinning. You're so cold, he said, almost teasingly, come to think of it, you still haven't told me where you keep your treasure. I'll save it for you before the fire gets it. So tell me where it is. Seriously, at a time like this? Usopp circled. Everything is burning around him and that's what he wants? Nami asked in disgust. Ace seemed to think the same. Your life is in danger and all you care about is treasure? If you don't care, then tell me where it is, Blue Jam replied calmly, grin still in place. Ace grimaced. You've gone mad, he hissed. If you're not gonna go it'll go to waste. Blue Jam continued as if he hadn't heard, if nothing is done, it'll be reduced to charcoal like my ship. What a waste. Don't be ridiculous. Luffy stared to protest, that treasure is. Alright, I'll tell you, Ace said, cutting his little brother off. Luffy looked stunned, then angry. Ace, he yelled, you and Sabo spent a lot of time. Sabo would understand. Ace yelled, cutting the younger boy off again, making all of Luffy's anger vanish in surprise. What matters most now is our lives. All of the Straw Hats noticed the slip. Even now, Robin whispered. Nami put a hand to her mouth. He truly believes it, doesn't he? She asked softly, that he doesn't deserve to live. It looks that way, Nami sis, Frankie said, arms crossed, a worried frown on his face. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of things have been said to him to make him think that. Luffy blinked, his eyes suddenly watery. Ace, we keep our treasure from the last 6 years in this tree, Ace explained, quickly sketching out a rough map and handing it to Blue Jam. The pirate captain reached out and took it. I see, he said. Luffy's face was scrunched up, tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. Don't cry, Ace said firmly, but softly, eyes glaring at the pirate in front of him. It's all right. This isn't the end. I have to admit, Ace is handling this situation pretty well given the circumstances, Sanji said. Chopper nodded. He's managing to stay calm, that's good. And he's doing it all for Luffy, Usopp added. Before anything else could be done though, the pirates suddenly snatch up the boys. What are you doing? Ace yelled, I told you where it was. You're right, this isn't the end, Blue Jam said with a smirk, which means you could be lying. You have to come with me. No way, then it would be too late to escape. Ace screamed in panicked protest, why don't you go on your own? Blue Jam pulled out his gun and pointed it at Ace's head. You don't want to mess with me now. I'm determined to make a comeback even if it means stealing from kids so I can take revenge on the nobles. And your brother is one of them. Revenge on the nobles? Frankie asked in confusion. It seems we were correct, Brook said. But it looks like the nobles stabbed Blue Jam and his shitty crew in the back, Sanji commented. Zoro rolled his eye. Shocker, he deadpanned. Jackass deserved it anyway. Nami grumbled, Usopp and Chopper nodding in agreement. They think they're so specithers as if we're trash, Blue Jam continued to rant. Luffy glared furiously at him while Ace yelled, Sabo isn't like that. He's one of them, you fool, Blue Jam yelled. He was only hanging out with you because it made him feel superior. His parents are rich beyond imagination. He was slumming with you for a cheap thrill. You were his playthings. That's not true, Luffy yelled, lips trembling. He was looking down on you and laughing at you the entire time. Stop talking about Sabo like that, Ace screamed. Yeah, Luffy cried, he just wants to be free. And then Luffy bit down on his captor's arm. Hard. The pirate released him with a scream of pain and Luffy hit the ground in a fighting stance, pipe out and ready. You little shit, the pirate exclaimed, bringing his sword down. Luffy brought his pipe up in an attempt to block the blow, but the sword cut through the pipe like it was nothing, slicing into the rubber boy's face. Luffy! The crew cried out with Ace as the boy fell to the ground. holding his face as blood gushed from the wound, screaming in agony. "I'll kill you, you brat," the pirate said, sword poised for the killing blow. "Let go of me," Ace screamed, struggling furiously, eyes widening as the sword began to come down. "Don't hurt Luffy." A wave of power suddenly emitted from Ace, spreading across the group, making everything freeze in place for a single, startlingly silent moment before the pirates started to collapse to the ground one by one until Blue Jam was the only one left standing. Even the flames retreated. Sanji stared, wide-eyed. "That was Conqueror's Haki," Zoro said, surprised. "But Ace is only what? 10? 11? Nami asked, the crew just as startled. Luffy was 17 when he awoke. His big brother of a monster is an even bigger monster, Usopp muttered. Haki is usually awakened under stressful situations, Robin explained. Well, I don't think we can get much more stressful than this, Frankie said. Blue Jam was left staring in shock and slight panic at his fallen men. Ace paid them no mind. As soon as he hit the ground, he was making his way over to Luffy. "Luffy," he exclaimed, kneeling by his brother's side, "are you okay?" Before Luffy could even try to form a response, Ace was yanked away by the back of his neck. "What did you do?" Blue Jam yelled, throwing the boy to the ground. "Damn it," Ace muttered as he struggled to get up. Blue Jam stomped down on his chest, stopping him. Ace made a choked sound as the air rushed from his lungs. "You creepy little brat," the insane pirate yelled as he pointed his gun at Ace's head. "Do you want to make a fool out of me too? You do that enough on your own, shitty asshole," Sanji growled. Luffy looked up in panic and horror. "Ace," he called, making a weak attempt to get to the older boy. Blue Jam grinned and his finger tightened on the trigger, only for his aim to be knocked away at the last minute. The crew stared in shock right along with the boys as Dayton and the bandits appeared through the flames. Dayton's hand was locked around the barrel of Blue Jam's gun as she glared furiously up at the pirate. "Dayton!" Luffy cried in surprise. "She showed up!" Nami exclaimed in shock. "Stop it, you sea cretin!" she yelled as Ace stared up at her in completely unguarded surprise. "Let go of Ace." She swung the axe in her hand at the pirate, who was able to bring up his sword to block the attack only to be knocked back anyway. "What are you guys doing here?" Luffy asked as Dogra knelt by him. "We finally found you," Magra exclaimed as he and the others ran up. "These are some serious wounds, Luffy," Dogra said before glancing around. "Where's Sabo?" "Sabo went home," Luffy panted out. "He's not here." Ace took a fighting stance as Blue Jam got back up. "Ace," Magra said softly, grabbing his arm to hold him back. "You're that mountain monkey from Mount Corvo," Blue Jam sneered. "I'm the mountain bandit, Dayton," she yelled in response. "I don't know why, but I'm registered as their foster parent. When someone tries to take my boys' lives, I won't stand by and watch, even if I'm not their real parent." The Straw Hats blinked in surprised confusion. "Huh. I didn't think she cared so much," Usopp said. "Before it was like she couldn't wait to get rid of them and now she's coming to their rescue?" "I guess she really does care," Chopper said. "I'll just let you go if you back away," Dayton called. "If you don't, then I'll have to resort to violence." The other bandits had swords and spears raised and ready. Blue Jam, though, grinned. "Try it," he said. "Oh yeah?" Dayton asked. "All right then." There was a tense moment of silence before the bandits turned as one. "Run away," Dayton yelled. The Straw Hat's sweat dropped. "You've got to be kidding me," Nami muttered as Robin chuckled next to her. "Well, at least she sounded cool," Frankie commented. "Ace, hurry up," Magra called. I will never run away," the boy yelled. "Is he serious?" Usopp screamed. "Run away, Ace," Chopper yelled. "He doesn't have time for this," Nami exclaimed. "The fire is still spreading. Staying here any longer means they won't be able to find a way out." Sanji grimaced. Sabo was right. This habit is getting him into trouble. "What are you saying, Ace?" Dogra yelled. "Don't try to fight him. Blue Jam is a real villain. He's not a guy that a kid like you can beat." Me too," Luffy said, feebly trying to get out of the bandits' hold on him. "I want to fight too." "Luffy, no," the bandit said, tightening his hold. "You all, go on ahead and take Luffy back," Dayton said, walking back towards Ace. "Boss?" the bandits questioned. "I'll make sure Ace comes back with me," she said firmly, and when no one moved, she shouted, "Go!" Why yeah, boss. Please come back alive. Ace, Luffy cried, reaching for his brother, Ace. The Straw Hats could only watch as the flames rose higher and burned brighter. Luffy clung to the wall, leaning on it heavily as he tried to drag himself along. He was nearly covered head to toe in bandages and he looked completely exhausted in a way his crew had never seen before. Well, at least they treated him this time, Sanji said. Easy, easy. You have to wait, Luffy, Magra said softly. You haven't recovered, where are you going? I had to go look for Ace and Dayton, Luffy panted out, desperation leaking into his weak voice. He finally made it to the door and managed to get it open, only to fall to the ground without it there to support him. Ouch, he whimpered, curling into a ball, though even that seemed difficult for him. Poor Luffy, Chopper whispered. See? That's what I told you, Magra said, gently scooping Luffy up and tucking back into bed. The other bandits all looked on anxiously, worry clear on their faces. Everyone is so different now, Nami said. Before they weren't even nice to the boys, but now. I suspect that is like Ace, Robin observed. What do you mean, Robin-san? Brooke asked. Ace is not good at expressing his emotions, especially tender ones, and when he does, it is usually in the form of anger, Robin explained. Robin Schwan is so smart. Zoro crossed his arms, rolling his eyes at Sanji but ignoring his idiocy for once. Makes sense, I guess. Regardless, after something like that, people tend to want to be together, Robin said softly, worried eyes on her tiny captain's form. You're seriously wounded, Magra said checking Luffy's bandages, you have to rest. There are a lot of troops in Grade Terminal right now taking care of the mess from the fire, Dogra added, coming to sit next to Magra. It's not just burnt junk they're taking care of, but survivors too. You're going to get killed if you go there. Frankie grimaced. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse. It seems these shitty nobles just don't have a lowest point, Sanji sneered. But, Luffy murmured, tears streaming from his eyes and surprised sobs racking his body until he couldn't hold them back anymore and sobbed openly, I want to see Ace, I know Saboo. And then Luffy started to cry harder. The bandits all looked down, their expressions equal parts guilt and worry as the boys' sobs echoed in the quiet room. Let me go. Luffy yelled, trying to shrug out of Magra's grip, Ace isn't dead. The crew flinched. While that escalated quickly, Usopp muttered. Luffy had healed mostly, though there were still some minor wounds. He wasn't about to let that stop him though, as the crew knew from experience. Now, I understand, Magra tried to placate, I understand how you feel. But the military is at Grade Terminal. Going there in your condition is far too dangerous. But you saw how big that fire was, Magra continued. The chances that they survived, he wilted some, even if the chances are slim. We want to believe that the boss and Ace survived. Dogra is looking for them right now. Let's just leave it to him. This is difficult for us all, Luffy. And the crew could tell that it was. The air around the hut was tense and anxious and there wasn't a smile in sight. Hey, guys! A bandit shouted, barreling through the doorway and then leaning over on his knees to catch his breath. They've returned. He yelled, looking up with a big grin and teary eyes. The Straw Hats let out a sigh of relief. That's good, Nami said with a smile. We knew Ace was going to make it, Zoro said with an indifferent shrug. I was still worried, Nami yelled, and we didn't know if Dayton made it or not. Thought you didn't like her? Zoro questioned. Shut up, she yelled, whacking the swordsman over the head. Immediately, everyone tried to squeeze through the door at once. Luffy, being smaller and also made of rubber, got past them all with ease. Are you kidding me? Usopp cried, jaw-dropping in disbelief. Ace was carrying Dayton's bandage-covered form on his small back. He was panting and covered in cuts and bruises, but he was alive. They both were. The bandits cheered and were quick to help the injured pair into the hut and start to treat them. A bandit brought Ace some clean clothes and he started to put them on when Luffy came up behind him and latched onto his waist. Ace, he sobbed, clinging tightly to his brother. Luffy, Ace growled. He paused though, and softened slightly when he saw Luffy's face. Did you think I was dead? He asked. Luffy let go and wiped his eyes, but, he choked out. What are you crying for? Ace yelled, whacking Luffy upside the head and making him cry for an entirely different reason. Don't act like I'm dead when I'm not, you idiot. And once again, we have Ace, Nami sighed, but there was this fond edge to her voice. Robin chuckled. He's not used to people being worried about him. Now, let him be, Magra said with a smile. Luffy is just happy. Ace glared for a second before sighing and letting his shoulders slump. Rolling his eyes heavenward as if he were asking for patience, he lifted an arm in invitation to the younger boy. Luffy took it without hesitation, diving at Ace and wrapping his rubbery arms around his brother at least 3 times, knocking them both to the ground. Ace grunted. "Damn it, Luffy," he muttered, raising one hand as if to strike the boy only to look at him sobbing into his chest and letting his hand fall with a sigh of defeat, resigning himself to being held. "You're such an idiot," he grumbled, staring at the ceiling. Luffy's arms just tightened around him. The Straw Hat crew smiled. "Wonder how Sabo's doing," Luffy said as he crouched down next to the white dog that the crew had come to know as Poochie. "Still, I'm glad that Ace is back and that Dayton is getting better." Poochie barked in response. He said, "Me too," Chopper translated. Luffy sighed. "I'm bored though," he whined. "Hey, Poochie, let's go look for some beetles." The crew watched as their tiny captain and the dog began to scour the yard for bugs. "It's nice to see Luffy-san playing like a child," Brook said. Frankie laughed. "Luffy bro is always playing," Brook chuckled. "True," he agreed, "but it is nice to see him so happy after such an ordeal." Luffy turned at the sound of footsteps to see Dogra walking up with a pale and stunned look on his face. Zoro's eye narrowed. "What's wrong with him?" "Dogra," Luffy called, "you went looking for Ace and Dayton, right?" "They've both come home," Luffy exclaimed with a bright grin. Dogra plastered a nervous smile on his face. "Are really? That's great," he said. "He doesn't seem too happy about it," Usopp commented. "Well, he was out looking for them," Nami pointed out. "Maybe he saw the soldiers taking care of things." "Let's go inside, Luffy," Dogra said. Luffy blinked, but did as he was told. "Dogra's back," he announced as he bounced through the door. Greetings were called out, but Dogra ignored them. Magra finally noticed his friend's pale face. "Dogra?" he asked. "What's wrong?" Dogra flinched. "Well, you see," he stuttered. "Just spit it out," Ace called. Dogra clenched his fists and took a deep breath. "Sabo's dead." The room froze. It was as if all of the air had been sucked away. No one breathed. No one made a sound. It was quiet. The crew's eyes went wide in shock. "What?" Luffy whispered, the first to break the painful silence. "What did you say?" "Sabo is dead," Dogra repeated. What?" Ace stuttered, completely stunned. "Sabo is..." Suddenly Ace's face darkened and he dove at Dogra, tackling him to the ground, fist red to strike. "You liar!" he yelled furiously. "Don't even joke about that." "Don't do it, Ace," Magra called out. "It's not a lie," Dogra said, "or a joke. It was so sudden, I barely realized that it had happened. I doubted my own eyes. I wondered if it was a dream or an illusion." "Shut up!" Ace screamed in rage and denial. "Sabo went back to his noble-born parents. There's no way he would sail out to sea." "That's right. Sabo went home," Luffy yelled, desperate for some reason, any reason, to make it seem like Dogra was lying. "Outlaws like us understand how he must have felt," Dogra yelled as he pushed Ace away. "We all have places we really don't want to go back to. Do you really think he would go out to sea if he were actually happy? Do you really think he would fly a pirate flag and set out on his own?" he cried, tears now running freely down his face. Ace began to shake violently as Dogra's words sunk in. They made sense after all. Sabo hated Hightown, had always hated Hightown. "They only care about money and social status, not me. Sorry if I offend you, but even though I had parents, I always felt lonely. I'll do whatever you want, I'll live however you want me to live, but please don't hurt them, please." Luffy's face crumpled completely as the meaning finally sunk in. "Sabo," he whispered, trembling, tears gathering in his eyes. Expression completely shattered. He wasn't happy at all, he cried. Ace pulled at his hair. "Why? Why didn't we try to break him out?" he cried, his voice broken, before he suddenly jerked up, face a mask of pure rage, and grabbed Dogra by his collar. "Who is the person who murdered Sabo? I'm going to kill them." Dogra's eyes went wide. "Why you can't, Ace?" he stuttered. "It was a noble. A Tenryubito. There's no way you can." That seemed to jerk the Straw Hats back to life. The shock of Sabo's death gripped them tightly, choking them. He was only child, had barely begun to live, and now he would never have the chance. A Tenryubito? Nami asked breathlessly. They just have to fuck everything up, don't they? Zoro growled. Ace threw Dogred to the ground and made a dash for the door, grabbing his pipe staff on the way. I'm gonna avenge Sabo. Deiden was suddenly there, though, cutting off Ace's path and slamming him into the ground. Drop it. You damn brat, Deiden yelled as she forced Ace to the floor. Get off me. Ace screamed as blood began to drip from the wound he received when Deiden jumped him. Don't get in my way. You keep acting tough, even though you don't have any real strength. Deiden screamed as pinned Ace down by his murderous glare. What the hell do you think you can do now? You'll just end up dead. You'll die and everyone will forget about you by tomorrow. That's all you amount to right now. It was this kingdom that killed Sabo. It was the world itself. What can you do? She paused, panting, glaring right back at the boy under her and giving him a rough shake. Your father's death brought about a new era. Once you have become a man of that caliber, then you're free to live or die as you like. Ace looked enraged at the mention of his father, but there was a spark of realization in his eyes. Go tie this moron up, Deiden ordered, tossing Ace to the bandits. The boy spat and struggled and cursed, but couldn't get away, and all the while Luffy's heartbroken sobs echoed through the night. So, he's really gone then, Nami whispered as the scene faded away. Looks that way, Sanji replied softly. Chopper wiped the tears off his face. That's not fair, he sobbed, he was just a kid. Robin knelt down beside him and wrapped her arms around him. He clung to her. We know, Chopper, we know. And it pained the crew that there was nothing they could do about it. No magic way to fix it. It was like Marineford all over again. Finding out and being too far away to help, even though this had happened long before any of them had met Luffy. The image of their tiny captain sobbing was seared into their minds and his cries echoed in their ears. They wanted to reach out and hold him and somehow protect him from the cruel world. But they couldn't, so they cried for him instead. The ship was quiet again in the morning, but this time, the silence had nothing to do with their captain's absence. A weight was pressing against their chests, suffocating them. It's strange, Nami says softly, breaking the almost painful silence. He's always so happy, so oblivious to everything. You would never even begin to think that he could carry so much heartbreak, Brook finished. He's always understood so much more than he lets on, Robin said, looking into her coffee mug, yet I find myself feeling like I don't understand as much as I should. I know what you mean, Frankie said, rubbing the back of his neck. It never occurred to me that Luffy bro had gone through so much. It explains why he can get us so easily though, Usopp pointed out. I wish he didn't, Nami murmured. There isn't anything we can do about it now, Zoro said, arms crossed over his chest, so there's no point in worrying over it. The past is in the past and we can't change that. But, he's been hurting and none of us even knew, Chopper exclaimed. We know now, Sanji said, taking a drag of his cigarette. Yeah, but I still feel like we should have noticed, Usopp grumbled. I mean Luffy might not know exactly what's happened to all of us, but he, I don't know, still figures out how to relate to us. Zoro shrugged. Luffy's always been that way. That's just how he is. I suspect if more people were like Luffy-san the world would be a much better place, Brook commented. Indeed, Robin said, but Luffy is a rare case. What do you mean Robin? Chopper asked. Robin smiled at him. Just think about it Chopper, she said. How many people have you met that have acted like Luffy, if only a little? Not many, the reindeer said after a moment. He's special, Robin continued with a fond smile. He connects to people, sees into their hearts, makes them believe that things they only ever imagined are possible. Not many people are like him. That's for sure, Nami said. Luffy bro is super amazing, Frankie exclaimed. I just wish we could have helped him before all of this. Usopp sighed. I know what you mean. Nothing any of us can do about it now, Sanji said. We just have to keep our heads up and move forward. But, he must be so sad inside, Chopper said. I know I still get sad thinking about Doctor sometimes. Pain like that never really goes away, Zoro said. Besides, Luffy already knows to move forward. He knows where he's going. He's going to be Pirate King. All we have to do is make sure he doesn't get lost along the way. Usopp waved a hand in dismissal. You should probably leave that part to Nami, Zoro. If we follow you, we'll just end up at Marine headquarters. Oi, and for the first time since their captain had fallen asleep, Sunny was filled with laughter. When night fell, the crew once again opened their eyes in the white void. Copper sat up and rubbed the sleep from his eyes with a yawn. I don't know if I want to see any more, Chopper said softly, looking up at Usopp, who was kneeling next to him. Usopp sighed. I know. But we don't really have a choice in the matter, he said, glancing up at his nakama. They all wore resigned looks. They didn't know what they were going to see this time. After last night, they just didn't know what to expect. It was hard enough to watch as it was with the knowledge that they did not have their captain's permission. But when something as sudden and cruel as Sabo's death was, it made it almost impossible. It pushed the point that these memories were private even more. They were seeing their captain's most intimate moments, whether they wanted to or not. Luffy will understand, Zoro said firmly. And the crew had no doubt that he would. But that didn't mean that he wouldn't feel anything. Nami took a deep breath. It'll be better not to think about it, she said, brow furrowed. We can't do anything to stop it and we already decided that we're going to tell Luffy exactly what happened. We shouldn't dwell on it. Nami Swan is right, Sanji said. We shouldn't worry about it since we can't do anything about it. Perhaps we should simply learn about Luffy-san's past and then help him as best we can, Brook offered, looking around at the crew. I think that is the best we can do, Robin said softly. Frankie sighed. It's not much, but it will have to do. The white void began to shift, the blue of the sky and the green of the grass consuming the white. The sound of the waves pounding against the cliff face erased the silence. Looks like it started again, Sanji mused. This is the place they declared their dreams, isn't it? Nami asked, glancing around. Now that you mention it, it does look familiar, Usopp said. Ah, Brook exclaimed, there's Luffy-san. The crew looked over and, sure enough, there was Luffy, lying down in the grass on his stomach, straw hat covering his head. His breath kept getting caught in his throat and every so often, his shoulders trembling. He's crying, Chopper whispered. Can you blame him? Nami asked softly, her mind flashing back to the beginning of her own nightmare. Her mother's bright smile and soft eyes. Before anyone could respond, Ace came walking out of the trees. His face was oddly blank, lips twisted into a slight scowl. He paused a short distance away, staring at Luffy's trembling form. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, Ace strode over to his little brother, raised his fist and decked Luffy in the back of the head with it. Wah! Ace! Usopp exclaimed. What's he doing? Chopper shouted in obvious distress. How long are you going to sulk? Ace asked, voice stern as he turned away to look out at the sea, arms crossed over his chest. That's not fair, Nami protested. He can't just tell Luffy to stop feeling sad about what happened. Indeed, Brook said sadly, gripping his cane as he remembered, we must all grieve in our own ways in our own time. Ace was silent for a moment. All the treasure we hid in the middle forest is gone now, he said, his tone of voice suggesting that it didn't matter anyway, shrugging. Maybe it was stolen by the survivors of Blue Jam's crew or maybe the military found it. I don't know where it is now. Luffy stayed silent. He didn't move, didn't give any sign of acknowledgement. But that pile of loot doesn't matter anymore. Ace continued on anyway. Sabo and I were going to use it. It was our pirate fund. But in the end, Sabo didn't use it, so I'm not gonna bother with it either. Not much point in gathering treasure if we can't look after it. You'd think he'd be angrier, Usopp said. Why? Sanji asked with a frown. His brother just died. Compared to that, what the hell does a pile of metal and stone amount to? I know that, Usopp protested, it's just, I dunno, I thought Ace would be mad about it. He gets mad about everything. But Ace was the one who gave up the treasure in the first place, Robin reminded gently. He'd already made the decision to let it go. Ace and the crew immediately turned to Luffy's trembling form. He was gripping his hat tightly, knuckles white around the brim. I want to become stronger, their little captain declared, sniffling all the while, stronger, and stronger, stronger and stronger, stronger and stronger, stronger, stronger and stronger, stronger and stronger, stronger and stronger, and even stronger than that. And then, I'll be able to protect anything. I won't have to lose anyone ever again. Luffy, Nami said quietly, eyes soft. You can't protect anything if you're weak, Zoro murmured. Looks like Luffy bro learned that lesson the hard way, Frankie said. And he kept it with him, Snodgy added. It explains a lot actually. Why he's so protective of us. It does, Robin said softly. Please, Ace, Luffy called, voice thick with tears, don't die. The crew flinched. They couldn't help it. Because they knew what would happen, because they knew that the world would rip their captain's only remaining brother away for no oath it could. And as much as they wanted to change it, they couldn't. Don't be ridiculous, Ace yelled, whacking Luffy upside the head. You should be more worried about yourself. You're way weaker than I am. He straightened, hands on his hips, a fierce glare on his face. Listen up and remember this, Luffy, I will not die. Oh Ace, Nami whispered, eyes wet. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep, Zoro said blankly, only the slightest of twitches around his eyes giving away his distress. Perhaps it says something though, Robin commented thoughtfully, that Ace is now willing to live. So, his promise to Luffy will keep him alive? Chopper asked, sniffling. No, Robin said, because they all knew that it didn't, more so the fact that he was willing to make the promise in the first place. Before, such a thing might not even have occurred to him. If that's the case, he ain't living for himself, he's living for Luffy bro, Frankie said, crossing his arms. I think expecting Ace-san to go from believing he shouldn't exist to living for himself is unrealistic, Brook said, his tone carrying the weight of someone who knew, living for Luffy-san, while not the best it could be, is a remarkable improvement. Luffy finally moved, pulling himself up into a sitting position. Sabo made that request too. I promise, I won't die, Ace exclaimed, expression determined. There's no way I could die and leave behind a weakling little brother like you. That got a few chuckles. Looks like Ace is still Ace, Usopp said with a sigh. It's still odd though, Nami said, looking at Ace thoughtfully. Ace was just so different when we met him in Alabasta. I wonder why. There are many things that could cause someone to change, Robin commented, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not smart, Ace continued, turning away from Luffy to look back at the sea, so I don't really know what killed Sabo, but whatever it was the opposite of freedom. Sabo died without ever gaining his freedom. Luffy flinched at that, shoulders tensing as he clenched his fists. But the two of us, who shared a toast with Sabo, are still alive, Ace said, so listen up, Luffy. We will definitely live life without regrets. Luffy nodded, wiping a hand across his eyes. Yeah, he croaked. The scene began to fade out, the sea washing out to white. I suppose that would be the true beginning of Luffy-san's resolve, Brook said thoughtfully. True, Robin commented, a promise made to those you have lost is a promise that is never broken. Zoro's fingers tightened around Watto's hilt as he nodded in agreement. Trees began to fill in the void and the crew recognized the forming clearing as the spot the boys used to train. Luffy charged his brother, swinging his arm in a circle to build up momentum. Nami's lips twitched up into a slight smile. Looks like they're at it again. Here I come, Ace, Luffy yelled, throwing his arm forward, gum pistol. Luffy's fist shot forward, heading directly towards Ace, whose eyes widened in surprise. Whoa, Usopp exclaimed, did he finally get it? Ace sidestepped the blow, surprise clear on his face at Luffy's improved aim. Only for Luffy's arm to spring back from the recoil and knock the rubber boy to the ground. Not quite, Sanji chuckled. But Luffy-san is improving, Brook said. Ace stared for a moment, completely dumbfounded before bursting into laughter. What the hell is that? You call this a fight? Luffy was too dazed to respond from his place on the ground. No matter how much force you put into it, there's no point if you can't hit me, Ace continued, smirking. I told you, rubber isn't suited for battle. If I didn't know any better, I'd agree with him, Nami said, shaking her head in disbelief. Robin chuckled. A devil fruit requires practice just like any other skill. Shut up. Don't say that, Luffy shouted as he sprang up from the ground, waving his fists in furious protest. What, are you saying that I'm wrong? You're just an anchor who's also bulletproof, Ace shouted back. Ooh, that's gotta hurt, Usopp said with a wince. Sanji snorted. His pride anyway. I don't know, Frankie said, rubbing the back of his head. Ace bro isn't exactly wrong. But he gets better, Chopper protested. After lots and lots of practice, Usopp agreed. Don't make fun of my Gomu Gomu no mi, Luffy shouted. Someday, I'll make you cry. After all, I thought up a technique more powerful than a pistol. Oh geez, Nami groaned, rolling her eyes. Look at them go at it, they really are brothers. Luffy, great work. A voice called out, making the Straw Hats freeze. No way, Usopp whispered. Your arm stretched a lot further than it did yesterday, the voice continued. Sabo? Sanji cried in disbelief at the appearance of the blonde boy. Sabo? You're too soft on him, Ace yelled. Luffy, on the other hand, cheered. I'm really becoming stronger than I was yesterday. Sabo's laughter echoed through the trees before the boy vanished, leaving a rock in his place. Ace and Luffy froze, staring. What just happened? Nami asked, eyes wide. Was it a GGGH ghost? Usopp stuttered, hiding behind Zoro. Get off me, Zoro said, shrugging out of Usopp's grip and ignoring the sharpshooter's whimpers. Anything is possible, Brook said. It could have been anything, a hallucination or a figment of their imagination. Or it really could have been Sabo-san. I guess we'll never know, Robin said. Luffy reacted first, turning away and sighing. Sabo was such a kind older brother. What's that supposed to mean? Ace yelled, would you rather I died instead? Whoa, where did that jump in logic come from? Sanji asked. I never said that. Luffy shouted back. But that's basically what you meant, Ace snapped, hitting Luffy over the head with his fist. Ow! Sabo never punched me like that, Luffy yelled, holding his head in pain. What was that? Ace shouted. What's with you? Be a little nicer, will you? Luffy yelled. This escalated rather quickly, Frankie mused. Are they even fighting about anything? Nami asked. Or are they just yelling for the sake of yelling? Why would they do that? Chopper asked in confusion. Because they're idiots, Nami deadpanned. Zoro snorted. Knowing them, it's probably both. The scene shifted again, this time outside of Dayton's hut. It was day and the boys had each built their own forts. Countries? Usopp questioned, reading the signs on the forts, head tilted to the side in confusion. What in the world are those idiots doing now? Zoro asked, as the boys declared their independence from the bandits. Except when they needed to use the bath, and from each other. Who knows, Frankie said. Dayton apparently agreed and gave up trying to reason with them, just rubbing her forehead with a resigned sigh. Something the crew could relate with. The scene blurred again, the sky clouding over and the hut melting into trees. Rain started to fall and the sound of thunder rolled in. This is really strange, Chopper said as the rain fell straight through him. At least we don't have to worry about getting hit by lightning and dying a painful death, Robin said with her usual pleasant smile. Usopp shuddered. Must you? A low, threatening growl drew the crew's attention. They turned to see Luffy, pipe staff in hand, facing down a bear. A very large bear. That thing is huge. Nami yelled. This place is seriously unnatural, Usopp said. Why the heck are all the animals around here so gigantic? Dunno, Frankie replied, but it looks like Luffy bro is going to try and fight it. Will he be alright? Chopper asked worriedly. If not, then the bear will probably eat him, Robin said calmly, unless it doesn't like rubber, in which case it may spit him out, she added as an afterthought. Do you really have to say things like that? Chopper and Usopp cried. Ace, Luffy called, slowly backing away, his pipe staff raised in defense. It's a bear, help me out. The crew turned, and as Ace lounging in a tree branch looking completely unconcerned. What in the world is he doing? Usopp asked. Ace just scoffed and turned his head away. What, you're going to survive on your own, aren't you? He asked, his voice almost mocking, like he didn't think Luffy could do it. Luffy grimaced and turned away. Is Ace insane? Nami yelled. There's no way Luffy can take that bear. Luffy bro is definitely in some serious trouble, Frankie said, brow furrowed in concern. Little Luffy charged the bear, staff in hand. He managed to land a hit, but that only seemed to make the bear angrier. It roared and, while Luffy was still in midair and unable to dodge, it took a swipe at Luffy with its claws. Luffy! The crew screamed in horror as their captain's tiny body fell to the ground covered in blood. They heard Ace echo their cry as the memory began to fade out. What the hell was Ace thinking? Sanji cried, letting Luffy take that thing on his own. He's always going on and on about how weak Luffy is. The scene settled again, and it was raining harder, the water coming down in sheets. Ace had Luffy draped over his back as he ran through the trees. Well, at least he didn't just leave him, Usopp grumbled. I do not think Ace-san would do that, Brook said softly. I'm sure he didn't mean for this to happen. It doesn't change the fact that it did, Zoro said, arms crossed over his chest. Just because Ace doesn't mean for something to happen doesn't mean that it won't. He has to take responsibility for that. Sabo isn't there to mediate anymore, Robin mused. He was the one who kept the balance between them. Without him there, she trailed off a pensive frown on her face. They're left without direction, Nami said, her hands clutching at her heart, eyes dark with memory. Ace reached the clearing with Dayton's hut and pounded on the door. Hey, Dayton's country, is anyone there? He called, voice desperate. Luffy is injured. Please treat his wounds. Magra opened the door, eyes going wide at the sight to the boys. Magra, please help Luffy, Ace cried. Now, Magra said urgently, come in, quickly. The scene shifted that the crew was inside the hut now. Luffy was laid out on a futon, covered in bandages, Magra packing up the first aid kit next to him. Ace was backed against the wall, curled up, arms crossed over his face, trembling. Chopper wandered closer to Luffy, peering over his flushed face. He's got a fever, he said, entering doctor mode. Magra did a good job with bandaging his wounds. He should be fine. Nami sighed in relief. Oh, thank goodness, she said. Honestly, I don't think my heart can take this much longer. I know what you mean, Usopp said. It's bad enough watching him get into trouble now, but watching him get into this kind of trouble as a kid? No thanks. Now, this is no joke, Magra said, looking Luffy over. If he had been wounded any worse he could have died. Ace flinched violently from his place against the wall and Magra turned to look at him. The three of you always fought those wild beasts together as a team, right? Ace seemed to curl into himself even more. It's my fault, he choked out. I'm worthless, completely worthless. Ace-san, Brook murmured, as the boy began to completely break down. I'm sorry, Ace sobbed. I'm so sorry, Luffy. Magra sighed and placed a gentle hand on Ace's head. It was a testament to how upset he was that Ace didn't shove it away. Sanji sighed. I'm still kind of pissed at him, he announced, but, well, seeing him like this makes it difficult. Zoro shrugged. Like I said before, he needs to accept responsibility and move on. If he doesn't want it to happen again, then he needs to get his shit together. As harsh as it sounds, Zoro bro has a point, Frankie agreed. Ace, the crew whipped around to see Luffy's eyes half open and foggy. Luffy, Chopper cried, running to the boy's side. Is he alright? Robin asked, leaning over the doctor. Yes, Chopper replied with a relieved sigh. He's in pain, but he'll be fine. He's not even completely awake right now. Ace, Luffy croaked again. His brother's head snapped up, giving the crew a good view of the tears streaming down his cheeks. He rushed to Luffy's side. Luffy, he called out hesitantly. Luffy just sighed, his face relaxing and the tension draining out of his body. Ace, he whispered. Ace raised a hand and started to reach towards him before pausing. He's just sleeping, Ace, Magra said, he'll be fine. Ace's hand tangled in Luffy's hair as he lay down next to the boy, curling around him as much as he could without jarring him. I'm sorry, he whispered as the memory blurred around them. The room blurred, lightening as sunlight streamed through the windows. Luffy was sprawled out, limbs tangled in his blanket, sound asleep. He was still covered in bandages, but he looked significantly better. His fever broke, Chopper said, leaning over to examine his tiny captain. And these bandages look new. It's probably been a few days since the last memory. Nami shook her head. Of course he would be healed in a few days, she grumbled. Luffy-san has always bounced back rather quickly. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho, Brook chuckled. Yeah, but I don't know if we should be thankful for that or not, Sanji said dryly, considering the trouble he gets into. Normally, I'd say it was a good thing, Chopper said warily, but since Luffy seems to think he can walk while he's bleeding out. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with no, Usopp said. I don't see what the big deal is, Zoro said with a shrug. You wouldn't, bro, Frankie said, rolling his eyes as Robin chuckled lightly and Chopper fumed ready to start protesting. He was cut off when Luffy suddenly woke and sat straight up. "I'm hungry," he announced to the room. The crew sweat dropped. Ace, who had been dozing next to Luffy's mess of blankets, jolted awake. "Luffy?" he asked, drowsily. Then he blinked and his eyes got wide. "Luffy." Luffy beamed at him. "Hi, Ace, I'm hungry, I missed you." Ace sat there slack-jawed while Luffy blinked in confusion. "I missed you?" he asked in confusion, head tilting to the side. "It's like Alabasta all over again," Nami sighed. "What happened?" Brook asked. Luffy was out for 3 days and when he woke up, he couldn't figure out why it felt like such a long time since he'd seen us, Usopp explained. "And then he demanded food," Nami added. Ace just sighed. "You've been asleep for 5 days," he said. "Oh," Luffy said calmly, before his eyes widened comically, "I missed 25 meals." "Isn't that 5 meals in 1 day?" Frankie asked, scratching his head. "Yep," Usopp said, crossing his arms over his chest. "Personally, I'm more impressed with the math part." "Didn't even know the shitty rubberhead knew math," Sanji said, taking a drag of his cigarette. Ace blinked, silent for a moment, before throwing his head back and laughing. Luffy's brows furrowed in confusion. "Huh? What's so funny, Ace?" His older brother's laughter slowly calms. "Nothing, Lou," he said with a smile, reaching out to ruffle Luffy's bedhead. Luffy stared at Ace for a long moment before smiling back. "Okay," he exclaimed brightly, "but I'm still hungry." At that moment, his stomach growled loudly as if in agreement. The crew sighed fondly as the boys broke out into snickers. The scene shifted, wooden walls blurring into trees. The ceiling replaced with endless blue sky. Ace ran down the path, jumping over tree roots, Luffy trailing a ways behind him. "Ace," Luffy whined, "wait for me." "Come on, Lou," Ace called back. "You have to learn to keep up." Chopper's brow furrowed as he eyed the bandages still visible under Luffy's clothes and hat. "He shouldn't even be running right now," Chopper said. "How does Ace expect him to keep up?" "I thought Ace would go easier on Luffy after what happened," Nami said with a sigh. At that moment, Luffy tripped and was sent face first into the dirt. "Ouchie," he whined, voice muffled by the ground. The crew Watekton slowly pulled himself into a sitting position, one hand absently rubbing his chest. When he looked up, eyes darting around, there was no sign of Ace. "Ace?" he called out, brow furrowed in worry. "Seriously?" Usopp asked, frowning. "Hasn't he learned anything?" "Ace?" Luffy called again when there was no answer, eyes starting to look suspiciously glassy. There was no answer. Luffy ducked his head, his hat shading his eyes. His hands fisted in his shorts tightly and he sniffed loudly. The crew watched with growing irritation. Ace had left Luffy alone. Right after he had almost died because Ace stubbornly refused to look after him. The older boy had been so distraught over the whole thing they thought it had shown him that he needed to take his role as Luffy's big brother more seriously, but it appeared that was not the case. "What are you doing on the ground, Lou?" Luffy's head snapped up and the crew whipped around to see Ace standing with his hands on his hips and an annoyed frown on his lips. "Ace!" Luffy shouted, eyes gleaming. Ace's frown deepened. "Are you crying?" "No," Luffy said stubbornly, face set. Ace sighed and rolled his eyes, stepping forward and holding his hand out to Luffy. "I'm not gonna leave you behind," he said softly. When Luffy looked up, Ace plowed on, a light blush forming on his cheeks. "Come on. I saw a bear on the other side of the hill. It can be dinner." "It seems we judged Ace too quickly," Robin mused, smiling lightly as she observed Ace's blush. The boy really was shy when it came to feelings. "Well, he didn't have to wait so long to do anything," Usopp grumbled. Ace-san was a fair bit ahead of him, Brook pointed out. Perhaps it took him a few moments to realize that Luffy-san had fallen behind. Luffy grinned and took Ace's hand. "Okay." The scene faded out, the trees blending into wooden walls and the sky going dark. "Looks like we're back in Dayton's hut," Usopp said. "I wonder why they're sleeping here instead of in their hideout." Nami mused as she looked at the two sleeping forms bundled under various blankets. "Dayton was injured in the fire," Zoro said simply. "So?" Usopp asked, brow furrowed. Zoro rolled his eyes. "So why would they leave without knowing she had recovered?" Chopper perked up. "That's why they're staying." The swordsman shrugged. "It's why I would," he said. If she had saved my life, I would at the very least make sure she was okay. Luffy suddenly jerked awake, drawing the crew's attention. His eyes flew around the room in a disoriented haze, his breathing labored. It was obvious he had just woken from a nightmare. "Shush, Luffy, it's okay. It was just a bad dream," Nami said, giving into the temptation and reaching out to try and comfort her captain, only for her hand to pass right through him. She jerked away as if she'd been burned. Robin walked up to her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Nami sighed and leaned into her. "I just want to help him," she whispered, gazing sadly at her tiny captain's tormented eyes. "I know," Robin said softly. Luffy sat up, his breathing calming, and looked around, finally taking in his surroundings. He glanced at Ace, lips pressed, an obvious internal debate in his eyes. After a long moment he took a deep breath and nodded before getting up and crawling over to his brother. Carefully, so that he wouldn't wake Ace, he pulled back Ace's blankets and started to climb in next to his brother, only to pause when something white caught his eye. What's this?" he asked himself softly as he reached forward and took the piece of paper that was sticking out of Ace's pocket. "What did he find?" Chopper asked as Luffy unfolded the paper. Ace and Luffy, whoa. Was that Sabo again? Usopp asked, looking around for the blonde boy. "I think this is a letter from Sabo," Robin said as she leaned over her captain to get a look at the paper he was holding. Perhaps when Luffy read it, he read it in his brother's voice because he was the one who wrote it. "Makes sense," Nami said. "And since we're in Luffy's memories," Sanji added, "we experience everything the same way he did." "I hope you weren't hurt in the fire," Sabo's voice continued. "I'm worried, but I have faith in you. I'm sorry about this, but by the time you get this letter, I will be out at sea." "Oh, this is so not fair," Nami whispered, eyes wet. "Unfortunately, that's the way life is," Zoro said, but his voice was soft, almost gentle. "A lot has happened, and I've decided to sail ahead of you. My destination won't be this kingdom, but elsewhere. There, I'll get stronger. I'll become a pirate. Let's become pirates with more freedom than anyone else and then meet up someday. The three of us. Somewhere out there on the wide, free ocean. I'm sure that someday we'll meet." Chopper sniffed and wiped his eyes. Usopp knelt down and wrapped an arm around him, tears streaming down his own cheeks. Frankie and Brook looked close to sobbing and Nami was already crying silently. Even Zoro, Sanji, and Robin had misty eyes. "Oh, and Ace, I wonder who's the older brother between the two of us. 2 eldest sons and 1 younger brother. It might be strange, but this bond between us is my greatest treasure." Nami choked on a sob. This was close to home for her. Imagining if she was reading this letter from her sister, reading that the bond between them was the most precious thing. Because it was. Her bond with her sister was more important than any old scrap of gold or sliver of diamond. It was something to cherish. And she didn't think she could go on knowing that it had been torn away the same way her mother's had been. It struck a chord with all of the crew, not just because they had lost people or left them behind, but because the bond between them was the same. The bond between them was their treasure. Sure, there had been rough patches, but what kind of family didn't have an argument every now and then? Because that's what they had become for each other. They had created a home for themselves. A place where they could be themselves, where they could be safe and without worry. A place where they could be free. And for them, there was nothing more valuable than that. Luffy might still be a weakling and a crybaby, but he's still our little brother. So take good care of him for me. "That was beautiful, bro," Frankie sobbed, wiping his eyes. "Yo-ho-ho. It truly shows how deeply Sabo-san cared for his brothers," Brook said. Little Luffy sniffed loudly, causing Ace to stir. He quickly folded up the note and shoved it back in Ace's pocket before hastily wiping his eyes. Ace groaned and rolled over, facing Luffy and opening his eyes. "Luffy?" he asked, rubbing his eyes, voice heavy with sleep. "Have you been crying?" "No," Luffy protested quickly, frantically shaking his head. "Liar," Ace grumbled, "hurry up and get in already." Luffy didn't need to be asked twice, lying down next to his brother and pulling the blankets back up. "Did you have a nightmare again?" Ace asked, lying down on his back, eyes closed. Luffy was quiet for a moment before whispering, "Yeah. So he's been having them often," Frankie said. "It's not that surprising," Chopper said. "Given his age and the circumstances, it's normal." I wouldn't be surprised if he's developed some form of PTSD either. Nami frowned, but he's never shown any sign of it before. Chopper shrugged. It's entirely possible to grow out of it or for the symptoms to be reduced over time. Ace sighed. Just try to get some sleep. The brothers were quiet as they settled back down for the night. Ace? Luffy asked softly. You're a nice brother too. Ace's eyes flew open and turned to look at Luffy as the younger boy curled into his side. Before Ace could form a response though, Luffy was out and the scene faded. It looks like Luffy-san and Ace-san are doing fine, Brook said. Nami chuckled. Ace is still a little rough around the edges, but he's doing better.